Chapter 1594. Had Yi Xian really left? Answer. He had indeed left. However, he had only left the Undying Heaven Palace, and did not really intend to leave. Instead, he was hiding in the outside world under the cover of the Heaven Calamity transformation. Left? What a joke! How could Yi Xian leave? The other half of the cauldron was still in the hands of the Undying Heaven Lord. He would not leave no matter what. The heaven-shattering cauldron was too important to him, whether it was for the gate at the end of the primal chaos, for Liu Bai, or even for his own cultivation. As long as he found traces of the cauldron, he would not give it up. He had only told the Undying Heaven Lord that he had left to deceive him. In fact, Yi Xian's real goal was to snatch the other half of the cauldron from the Undying Heaven Lord. The clouds surged as he stood in the void. Yi Xian's eyes were deep, and his brows were slightly furrowed. The Heaven Calamity transformation had not dispersed, and had been concealing his aura. After all, he had only left the Undying Heaven Palace. With the Undying Heaven Lord's cultivation, it was very likely that he would be in danger if he dispersed the Heaven Calamity transformation. The other half of the cauldron is indeed in the hands of this old thief. Although I have opened the fourth gate of heaven, this old thief is still too far away. Yi Xian was very self-aware. Although he had the Heaven Calamity transformation to save his life, it was harder than ascending to the heavens to snatch the other half of the cauldron from the Undying Heaven Lord. However, Yi Xian believed that everything depended on effort. The Undying Heaven Lord was only stronger than him in terms of cultivation. Putting aside cultivation, Yi Xian did not think that he was much weaker than the other party. This old thief is very shrewd and vicious. It will be very difficult to scheme and snatch the cauldron from him. Since he could not do it openly, Yi Xian was prepared to do it secretly. However, he was somewhat at a loss. The other party's cultivation was too high. Even if it was difficult to guard against a sneak attack, absolute power could ignore any schemes. This old thief will definitely bring the other half of the cauldron with him. It seems that I will have to take a great risk if I want to snatch it from him. Yi Xian muttered to himself. He already had a plan in his mind. Wang. The Qiankuan pouch appeared in Yi Xian's hand, and 3 stalks of chaos absolute poison appeared. 9 poison soul-destroying flower, 10,000 withering soul water, soul-destroying demonic pill. This was an absolute poison from the primal chaos. Even immortals would die if they came into contact with it. However, Yi Xian didn't know if it could affect Undying Heaven Lord. Moreover, there was another crucial problem. How was Yi Xian going to poison the Undying Heaven Lord? Once one reached the level of a primordial being, they wouldn't even spare a glance at anything other than primal chaos treasures. It was impossible for the Undying Heaven Lord to consume these 3 poisons. Although it was impossible, it was not impossible. Yi Xian still had a chess piece in his hands. This chess piece was Canghuai Mia. Perhaps he could be of great help. Yi Xian pondered for a long time as he formulated a series of plans in his mind. Although it was extremely dangerous, he had no choice but to take this risk in order to seize the small cauldron in the hands of the Undying Heaven Lord. On the other side, Undying Heaven Palace. Under the Undying Heaven Lord's great magic power, the Undying Heaven Palace was quickly reconstructed. The dilapidated buildings and palaces also looked brand new. However, the Undying Heaven Palace had suffered great losses this time. Of the 2 immortal experts, one was heavily injured and on the verge of death, while the other was killed by Yi Xian. Moreover, one of them was the Undying Heaven Lord's prized disciple. Not only did this cause great losses to the Undying Heaven Palace, it was also a slap to the Undying Heaven Lord's face. It had to be said. The Undying Heaven Lord was indeed a scheming old fox. Even though Yi Xian had killed so many people from the Undying Heaven Palace, and even plundered their supreme treasure trove, there was still no change in his expression. Undying Heaven Palace. The Undying Heaven Lord sat cross-legged in the void, as the power of nirvanic extermination revolved around his body. He held the small cauldron in his hand, as a strand of nirvanic extermination energy revolved around the small cauldron. You dare to take my dog life in the future? What arrogance! The Undying Heaven Lord muttered coldly as his eyes flickered. Occasionally, A trace of heavy killing intent flashed across his eyes, proving that his heart wasn't calm at all. At this moment, there were no outsiders present. The undying Heaven Lord was muttering to himself. In fact, he was faintly regretting the enmity he had with Yi Xian. Yi Xian was like a cockroach that couldn't be killed. Every time he thought that Yi Xian was going to die, he would let him escape with his life. Moreover, every time Yi Xian appeared, his cultivation base would rise along with the tide. This made the undying Heaven Lord extremely shocked. This brat has obtained a forbidden escape technique. Even I can't do anything to him. If he continues to cultivate like this, he might become the strongest in the next Yuanhui. The undying Heaven Lord frowned as he muttered worriedly. I have to find a way to strangle him in the cradle. Otherwise, the longer we delay, the more variables there will be in the future. The undying Heaven Lord was filled with killing intent, as he made an extremely resolute decision. In fact, the undying Heaven Lord didn't notice one thing. He was secretly afraid of Yi Xian, and even treated Yi Xian as someone on the same level as him. He was afraid and apprehensive at the same time. Back then, the Lord of the Extreme Devil had died at the hands of Yi Xian. This had already touched his sensitive nerves. Moreover, the appearance of a forbidden character and the forbidden escape technique Yi Xian used gave him an extremely heavy pressure. Despicable bastard. He stole the half-cauldron. My plan to obtain the Underworld Heaven Divine Pill has been delayed. If I don't kill him, he will be a great threat to me. Boom! The power of nirvanic extermination rumbled endlessly, shattering the surrounding void. The undying Heaven Lord's eyes were cold as he constantly thought of how to deal with Yi Xian. Previously, the undying Heaven Lord had said that he and Yi Xian were the same kind of people. This sentence was indeed correct. They would use unscrupulous means to achieve their goals. They were equally ruthless and decisive. They were equally sinister and merciless. Although the two of them had similar personalities, it was often impossible for people with similar personalities to be friends. Instead, they would become enemies that would fight to the death. Because the two understood each other too well, they both knew that only by killing each other could they be free of worries. There was an old saying that went, "Those who understand you are not necessarily your friends, but your enemies who hate you to the core." Although this sentence was a little biased, there was a certain degree of truth in it. Men. The undying Heaven Lord calmed down, and his voice spread outside. The undying Hall Master quickly entered to listen to the Heaven Lord's instructions. As the undying Heaven Lord gave a series of orders, the undying Hall Master's expression kept changing. There was even a hint of surprise on his face. Heaven Lord, this will make you an enemy of the extreme emotion Heavenly Palace. You must think carefully. The undying Hall Master whispered in a trembling voice. It's just extreme emotion. She's nothing in my eyes. Go. Do as I say. The undying Heaven Lord said in a deep voice. Yes, Heaven Lord. The undying Hall Master hurriedly accepted the order and left. Chapter 1595. There was no sound in the void as silence rumbled. The undying Heaven Lord held the half-revered cauldron in his hand, as a cruel smile appeared on his face. Yi Xian, don't think that I can't control you just because you have learned the forbidden escape art. When the time comes, I will make you obediently return the cauldron to me. This Lord will personally destroy you in both body and soul. In terms of insidiousness, the undying Heaven Lord was on par with Yi Xian. The only difference was that the undying Heaven Lord's cultivation was extremely strong. This was something that Yi Xian lacked. On the other side, poison. Song Huaimia's knees went soft as he fell to the ground. He looked at the three types of chaos absolute poisons with a pale face. His lips couldn't stop trembling. Mr. No Master, please don't joke around. What kind of cultivation does the Heaven Lord have? These three types of chaos absolute poisons are indeed terrifying. However, I'm afraid they are not enough to harm the life of an eternal strongest. Furthermore, I am just a little disciple. How can I make the undying Heaven Lord consume these three types of poison? Song Huaimia was about to cry. Yi Xian wanted him to poison the undying Heaven Lord. Not to mention whether he could succeed or not, his life would be forfeit. What are you afraid of? I didn't ask you to personally poison him. Yi Xian frowned and said. Ah. Song Huaimia was startled as he said with a trembling voice. Then what do you mean? Ah. Yi Xian's lips curled into a strange smile as he said with a deep gaze. An eternal strongest is also a human. However, there are too many people who treat him as a legend. As long as he is a human, he will have his weakness. Weakness? Song Huaimia was speechless. He really didn't know what weakness the undying Heaven Lord could have. His cultivation was invincible in the primal chaos. This was something that all living beings in the primal chaos respected. Greed, anger, resentment, love, separation, desire. As long as he is a human, he will not be able to escape from the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Do you think he is the master of fate who cultivates the heartless Tao? Furthermore, even the master of fate is still human. He has his own weaknesses, not to mention this undying old bastard. Yi Xian said sinisterly. Let me ask you, does this undying Heaven Lord have a wife, a descendant, or someone he trusts the most? Yi Xian asked with a deep gaze. Upon hearing Yi Xian's words, Song Huaimia couldn't help but shiver. He faintly sensed that Yi Xian was planning some sort of vicious scheme. I don't have any descendants, and the Heavenly Master rarely appears, let alone believe in anyone. However, Song Huaimia paused for a moment, as if he wanted to say something. But what? Yi Xian's eyes moved slightly as he continued to ask. Song Huaimia frowned, as if he was recalling something. Yi Xian didn't disturb him at all. He waited patiently. Just as Yi Xian had said, as long as he was a human, he would have a weakness. Even the strongest of all time was no exception. As the saying goes, only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you emerge victorious in every battle. Only by thoroughly understanding a person can you have a chance of defeating them. Yi Xian believed in this saying. Of course, Yi Xian also had a weakness, but he had minimized it. Ignoring others, Lu Bai was his greatest weakness. Otherwise, he wouldn't have frantically tried to save Lu Bai. After a long silence, Song Huaimia finally spoke in a trembling voice. Rumor, it is only a rumor. I don't know if it is true or not. What rumor? Yi Xian's eyes narrowed. Song Huaimia sorted out his thoughts and lowered his voice, as if he was afraid someone would hear him. But this also made Yi Xian's heart stir. He knew that what Song Huaimia was about to say would be an extremely great secret. Rumor has it that before the undying Heaven Lord attained the Tao, he had a woman he loved. This woman was killed by his enemy, causing his heart to turn to ash. He truly comprehended the Tao of Nirvana, and swept through the 5 regions of chaos, becoming the strongest of all time in the 4th epoch. And the enemy who killed his beloved was massacred by the undying Heaven Lord. He used an extremely cruel method to prevent them from reincarnating. Song Huaimia slowly said. Beloved? Yi Xian murmured. He didn't expect the undying Heaven Lord to have such a past. But in the next moment, Yi Xian felt relieved. The undying Heaven Lord was also a human, and humans had emotions. This was indeed understandable. Then what do you want to say? Yi Xian turned his thoughts and looked at Song Huaimia. Song Huaimia didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly lowered his voice and said, Rumor has it that the undying Heaven Lord buried his beloved in the undying Forbidden Land, and wanted to use an extremely powerful magic power to revive her. He even went to the 3 strongest existences in the primal chaos, but in the end, he returned without success. Oh! Yi Xian was startled. He vaguely understood what Song Huaimia was saying. Every 10,000 years, the undying Heaven Lord will disappear for 7 days. It is very likely that he entered the undying Forbidden Land to pay respects to his deceased wife. Song Huaimia said. Where is the undying Forbidden Land? Yi Xian quickly asked. He had already thought of a good plan. If he succeeded, the half-cauldron would definitely be in his hands. In the face of Yi Xian's questioning, Song Huaimia smiled bitterly and said, Mister, this is only a rumor. I only heard it by chance from the undying Temple Lord. As for where the undying Forbidden Land is, how would I know? Then aren't you talking nonsense with me after saying so much? Yi Xian's expression was cold. Mister, please don't be angry. Although I don't know where the undying Forbidden Land is, there are still 3,000 years until the last 10,000 years. The undying Heaven Lord will definitely go there. If Mr. can follow him, you will definitely know where the undying forbidden land is. Song Huaimia hurriedly explained. After hearing Song Huaimia's explanation, Yi Xian's expression relaxed. 3,000 years? Yi Xian muttered, I can still wait. Time flew by, and the years flew by. 3,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. During these 3,000 years, Yi Xian had been lurking outside the undying heaven hall. With the power of space and calamity transformation, even the strongest of eternity couldn't sense his presence. Yi Xian didn't kill anyone from the undying heaven hall. He was like an assassin in the shadows, waiting for the best opportunity. Yi Xian was never lacking in patience. He chose to believe in Song Huaimia's secret. He was waiting for the undying heaven lord to head to the undying forbidden land to pay his respects to his deceased wife. There's still no movement. In the void, Yi Xian frowned. Today was already 10,000 years, but the undying heaven lord still hadn't set off. Could it be that this was just a rumor? Suddenly, Yi Xian's spirit rose because a black figure was walking out of the undying heaven hall. It was the undying heaven lord, who hadn't moved for a long time. He disappeared. The moment the undying heaven lord walked out of the orthodoxy, he used greater teleportation and disappeared. This made Yi Xian clench his fists. He knew that the rumor was true. Fortunately, Yi Xian had the power of space and time, and the calamity transformation. Although his cultivation wasn't as high as the undying heaven lord, he wasn't far behind in terms of movement. Qi, with the power of space and time combined with the calamity transformation, Yi Xian instantly disappeared and followed the undying heaven lord. Chapter 1596. The void was soundless and without a trace. The undying heaven lord was traversing through space while Yi Xian's space-time power, combined with the heaven calamity transformation, followed behind him. The two of them traversed an endless distance, one in front and one behind. However, Yi Xian was very careful. He pushed his space-time power and calamity transformation to the limit to ensure that the undying heaven lord would not sense him. Moreover, Yi Xian didn't dare to follow too closely. Although Yi Xian knew that the undying heaven lord wouldn't be able to find any traces of him. The strongest of the ancient times was the strongest of the ancient times. If he followed too closely, the undying heaven lord would definitely sense it. Shuttling through space, Yi Xian carefully followed behind. He could only vaguely see the undying heaven lord's silhouette. The distance between them was at least 10 million li. Finally, half a day later, a jade-green mountain range appeared. The undying heaven lord turned into a wisp of black smoke and entered the mountain range, completely disappearing from Yi Xian's sight. This is the place. 10 breaths of time later, Yi Xian strangely appeared. He stared at the mountain range that was teeming with vitality, and a trace of doubt flashed through his eyes. This place was located at the extreme east of the central Great Domain. The spirit energy in this mountain range was very ordinary. Could it be that the deathless heaven lord buried his true love in this mountain range? Forget it. Yi Xian did not have the time to think about these boring questions. He shot towards the nameless mountain range. When Yi Xian entered this mountain range, he suddenly realized that there was indeed a huge problem here. From the outside, this mountain range looked very ordinary. But when he truly entered, Yi Xian discovered that this mountain range was actually a peerless array. If an ordinary person were to enter this place, they would only return the way they came. If a cultivator were to enter this place, there was a high chance that they would be trapped here. And this was only the outermost region. As Yi Xian continued to venture deeper into the mountain range, he realized that there was a large amount of white fog floating around him, and his surroundings began to blur. What a peerless ultimate formation! Yi Xian could definitely be called an array formation grandmaster. Although he didn't cultivate the astral origin art, he had once passed the primal chaos trial, so formations and restrictions were a piece of cake for him. However, Yi Xian was truly impressed by this grand formation. This was a grand formation personally set up by the undying heaven lord. Its supreme power was omnipresent. Even with Yi Xian's understanding of formations and seals, it was still extremely difficult for him to break this formation. If it was anyone else who entered this place, not to mention going deep into this mountain range. As long as they just entered, they would definitely trigger this great formation. Moreover, they would be attacked by boundless killing intent, and their souls would be scattered. Fortunately, Yi Xian had the heavenly calamity transformation. This forbidden escape technique allowed him to freely travel through the formation, without being affected by it. At this moment, Yi Xian couldn't help but sigh in his heart. The heaven calamity transformation was a great help to him. If it wasn't for this forbidden movement art, not to mention following the undying heaven lord here, he would have died long ago. Yi Xian turned into a wisp of green smoke and rapidly entered the depths. He was now 100% sure that the rumors Zhang Huaimie spoke of were true. Otherwise, the undying heaven lord wouldn't have set up such a terrifying array here. In the depths of the mountain range, there was a valley. The fiery leaves swayed in the wind. Small fiery trees took root in the soil. The fiery branches were filled with scarlet-red fruits. They emitted waves of spirit energy that would intoxicate anyone who smelled it. Fire spirit fruit? When Yi Xian entered this place, he frowned slightly. He naturally recognized the fruits on these trees. However, he found it strange. The fire spirit tree was one of the most ordinary spirit trees. The fruits it bore were also very ordinary. For low-level cultivators, they might be able to increase their cultivation. Other than that, they didn't have any other use. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Why would the undying heaven lord plant so many fire spirit trees? Before Yi Xian could ponder over the clues, a deep voice came from the valley. Although the voice wasn't loud, Yi Xian was sure that it was the undying heaven lord. Yi Xian no longer thought about the fire spirit trees. He concealed his aura perfectly and carefully walked into the valley. Inside the valley, in the lush fire spirit forest, a crystal coffin was placed in the center. A dignified woman was lying in the crystal coffin with her eyes closed. This woman's appearance wasn't stunning. It could be said that she was only average. Her face was very serene, as if she was sleeping. The undying heaven lord was dressed in black. He stood quietly in front of the crystal coffin. He no longer had any powerful aura around him. It was as if he had turned into an extremely ordinary person. Sorrow, loneliness, and a touch of vicissitudes. At this moment, the undying heaven lord seemed to have changed into a different person. His eyes were gentle and sorrowful. He was quietly staring at the woman in the coffin. Where was the ruthlessness from before? Sharon, I'm back. The undying heaven lord gently caressed the crystal coffin. His voice was very soft, as if he was afraid of disturbing the woman's sleep. The sorrowful aura around him also became denser. At this moment, Yi Xian was only 300 meters away from the undying heaven lord. This distance could be said to be extremely dangerous. Although the undying heaven lord couldn't discover Yi Xian, he would definitely sense the existence of a second person. This was a powerful spiritual sense. Although he couldn't find Yi Xian's tracks, he could sense that there was an outsider here. However, the undying heaven lord was currently immersed in sorrow. His spiritual sense was naturally somewhat ineffective. Moreover, Yi Xian had pushed the heaven calamity transformation to the extreme, making it impossible for the undying heaven lord to discover him. So this old thief still has a weak side. This scene made Yi Xian whisper in his heart. No matter how heinous a person was, no matter how much he killed, there would always be a pure land in his heart. Clearly, the woman in the coffin was the undying heaven lord's pure land. She should also be the undying heaven lord's true love. Shaoran, it's already the 10th period. Wait a little longer. When the 12th period arrives, I will definitely be able to break the curse of reincarnation and truly transcend. At that time, you and I will be reunited. I once went to find those 3 old fellows. In terms of cultivation, I was never afraid of them, because they could control the 3 long rivers. I once thought that as long as the 3 long rivers were reversed, I would be able to truly revive you. However, those 3 old fellows were too stubborn. They told me that the will of the primal chaos was irreversible. I even fought with them, but in the end, the undying heaven lord said sorrowfully, I once went to look for the Heavenbreaker cauldron, and also tried to steal that mysterious ancient scripture, and that mysterious weapon. However, after studying it for several periods, I gained nothing. In the end, it was stolen by a little thief. However, I intentionally allowed him to steal it because the one who ordered him to do so was that old bastard, the master of primal chaos. The undying Heaven Lord spoke a lot. He constantly murmured to the woman in the coffin, sometimes smiling and sometimes sad. He also recounted many of the beautiful memories they had shared. Yi Xian had been listening in the dark. He finally had a great understanding of the undying Heaven Lord's past. Chapter 1597. At this moment, Yi Xian was silent, because he realized that the undying Heaven Lord was indeed very similar to him. Their personalities were extremely similar. The only difference was that the undying Heaven Lord was more emotional than him, and the woman in the coffin had accompanied him as he grew up. However, this woman had still fallen on the path to becoming the strongest throughout history. Moreover, she had fallen because of the undying Heaven Lord. This was the pain of his life. The so-called beautiful love story was nothing more than this. The undying Heaven Lord, and the woman in the coffin, could be said to have gone through many trials and tribulations before they were separated forever. 7 days passed, and the undying Heaven Lord's emotions gradually calmed down. His supreme aura also gradually appeared, and the words he spoke became less and less. Yi Xian quietly retreated. He knew that the undying Heaven Lord was waking up, and if he continued to stay here, he would definitely be discovered. Xiaoran, I'm leaving. I will definitely take back that half cauldron. Legend has it that the heaven-shattering cauldron contains a forbidden heavenly law. As long as I can obtain this law, we might not even need to wait until the end of the primal chaos before we can reunite. The undying Heaven Lord's sorrowful expression gradually disappeared, and he regained his cold and calm expression. He took one last deep look at the woman he loved for his entire life, before suddenly turning around and leaving. At this moment, Yi Xian hid in the void and activated the Heaven Calamity transformation to the extreme. He didn't even dare to move recklessly, because he had to ensure that the undying Heaven Lord wouldn't notice him. Even when Yi Xian saw the undying Heaven Lord leave the valley, Yi Xian still didn't reveal himself. Instead, he became even more cautious and concealed his aura. As expected, Yi Xian clearly saw the undying Heaven Lord leave the valley, but the undying Heaven Lord appeared again a day later. Only after confirming that no one was following him did he leave the valley with peace of mind. This time, Yi Xian waited for a full 3 years, until the undying Heaven Lord didn't appear again. Only then did Yi Xian appear beside the crystal coffin. That old thief is indeed careful. If it was anyone else, they would definitely have died in his hands. Yi Xian muttered. At this moment, there was no one in the valley. Yi Xian finally appeared. He looked at the woman in the coffin, and a hint of hesitation flashed across his eyes. At that moment, a multiple-choice question was placed in front of Yi Xian. Clearly, the undying Heaven Lord cared a lot about this woman. If Yi Xian used her corpse as a threat, he could force the undying Heaven Lord to hand over the half cauldron. However, Yi Xian hesitated. It was not because he felt pity for her, nor was it because he was moved by the poignant love story between the undying God Lord and this woman. It was Yi Xian's bottom line. Indeed, Yi Xian could do anything to achieve his goals, and he could even be cruel and sinister. He would do anything. However, using a dead woman to threaten the undying God Lord was too despicable for Yi Xian. His pride wouldn't allow him to do so. Yi Xian was a very prideful person. If he really chose to do so, it would be a violation of his bottom line. His pride wouldn't allow him to do so. Or perhaps Yi Xian and the undying Heaven Lord were the same kind of people. Looking at this woman, he felt as if he was looking at his former wife. Empyrean Fairy, Guanghan Fairy. If someone dug up the grave, Yi Xian would really go crazy. If the same thing happened to the undying Heaven Lord, he would probably go berserk. If the enmity between two men involved a dead woman, then this wasn't something a man should do. But, however, if he didn't use this dead woman to threaten the undying Heaven Lord, Yi Xian didn't know how to make the undying Heaven Lord hand over the half cauldron. At this moment, Yi Xian frowned and was in a state of hesitation. He had to obtain the half cauldron in the undying Heaven Lord's hands. However, If he dug up the grave and used this woman's corpse to threaten the undying Heaven Lord, Yi Xian wouldn't do such a thing. Seems like this is the only way. After half an incense's time, Yi Xian's gaze became firm. He took a deep look at the woman in the crystal coffin and made a decision. 1. 3 types of primal chaos poison appeared in the void. They were the 9 poison soul exterminating flower, 10,000 withering soul water, and soul severing demonic pill. These 3 were primal chaos poison. Even immortals would die if they came into contact with them. However, Yi Xian didn't know if the immortal sovereigns could withstand them. However, Yi Xian had no other choice. He could only give it a try. Boom! Yi Xian casually shot out a terrifying flame and directly refined the 3 types of primal chaos poison into a ball of liquid. He then carefully smeared it on the crystal coffin. After doing all this, Yi Xian's forehead was covered in sweat. Yi Xian looked relaxed. However, he didn't dare to be careless. If he came into contact with these 3 types of primal chaos poison, he would definitely die. Undying old thief, and I will not rest until one of us is dead. Only one of us can survive. However, our grudges will not implicate you. I will personally send him down to meet you. You can be husband and wife in your next life. Yi Xian looked at the woman in the coffin and muttered to himself. Everything was ready except for the east wind. After smearing the 3 types of primal chaos poison on the crystal coffin, the only thing left was to lure the undying Heaven Lord over. However, Yi Xian felt that this was an easy task. This place was protected by an unparalleled great array. As long as Yi Xian touched a trace of the restriction, the undying Heaven Lord would be the first to sense it. Boom! Yi Xian's 5 fingers slapped towards the fire spirit forest. Following a terrifying sound, large amounts of fire spirit trees turned into ashes. The unparalleled great array was activated. At the same time, the undying Heaven Lord had just returned to the undying Heaven Palace. He hadn't even sat down properly when his entire body stiffened. His originally calm and cold expression instantly became sinister and distorted. Boom! A heaven-shaking killing intent erupted forth. The power of nirvanic extermination pierced through the heavens and earth. The undying Heaven Lord broke through space and disappeared from sight. Half an incense sticks time. At most half an incense sticks time, the undying Heaven Lord suddenly appeared in the valley. His entire body was surrounded by the terrifying power of nirvanic extermination. The surrounding void was faintly collapsing. Xiao ran. When the undying Heaven Lord saw the collapsed fire spirit trees, his face was terrifyingly ashen. His entire body shot towards the crystal coffin. Boom! When the undying Heaven Lord appeared in front of the crystal coffin and saw the woman sleeping peacefully in the coffin, his frightened expression gradually disappeared. He was only panting heavily. Who came here? Seeing that the woman he loved was unharmed, the undying Heaven Lord heaved a sigh of relief. However, he suddenly woke up. Someone had destroyed some fire spirit trees and activated the great array. This meant that someone had indeed come here. Who dares to disturb my wife's sleep? The undying Heaven Lord's face was gloomy. He looked around and used his powerful spiritual sense, hoping to find the intruder. Yi Xian, it's you. Get out here for this lord. The undying Heaven Lord was experienced and ruthless. Although he was panicking in his heart, he quickly guessed that it was Yi Xian's doing. It was a pity. No matter how much the undying Heaven Lord roared, Yi Xian was nowhere to be seen. This made the undying Heaven Lord's heart tremble. Chapter 1598. In terms of shrewdness, the undying Heaven Lord was extremely shrewd and ruthless. He did not show his emotions on his face, but when it came to his true love, he could not remain calm. Wang. All of a sudden, the undying Heaven Lord's palm flickered, and a half-cauldron appeared. He looked around and said coldly, Yi Xian, this lord knows that you want this half-cauldron. Actually, you don't have to do this. If you want it, this lord will give it to you. Unfortunately, Yi Xian still did not appear. This caused the undying Heaven Lord's heart to become heavier and more flustered. Humans were always afraid of the unknown. Even the strongest experts of all time were no exception. The undying Heaven Lord was also human. Humans had their weaknesses, and his weakness was the woman in the coffin. At this moment, Yi Xian was nowhere to be seen. Moreover, other than Yi Xian, the undying Heaven Lord could not think of anyone else. After all, he had already experienced Yi Xian's forbidden escape technique. The more flustered a person was, the easier it was for them to make mistakes. The undying Heaven Lord also had this problem. He immediately thought of whether Yi Xian had done something to the woman in the coffin. Boom! The undying Heaven Lord's 5 fingers suddenly pressed on the crystal coffin. Obviously, he wanted to open the coffin to see if the woman was fine. However, this also happened to fall into Yi Xian's vicious trap. Just as the undying Heaven Lord's hand pressed on the crystal coffin, he was stunned. Then, his expression changed, and he abruptly removed his hand from the crystal coffin. Unfortunately, it was too late when the undying Heaven Lord realized it. The undying Heaven Lord's hand was as black as ink. Then it rapidly spread to his entire body. The terrifying 3 absolute poisons instantly infected his entire body. Little dog Yi Xian, you dare to scheme against this lord? The undying Heaven Lord roared furiously. Terrifying nirvana energy erupted from his body to block the damage caused by the 3 great poisons. Pooh! A mouthful of black blood spurted out from the undying Heaven Lord's mouth. He sat down cross-legged, and the half cauldron in his hand fell to the ground. 9 poison soul-destroying flower, 10,000 withering soul water, soul-destroying demonic pill. Even the strongest of the Eons wouldn't dare to touch them. Due to his carelessness, the undying Heaven Lord was poisoned. It might not be enough to take his life, but it was enough to cause a calamity for him. Pa! 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 A burst of applause rang out as Yi Xian slowly walked out of the void. He looked at the undying God Lord with a calm expression, and a trace of a smile appeared on his face. What a pair of lovers! If it weren't for this woman, you wouldn't have fallen into this vicious trap. Actually, you were too rash. If you had calmed down, I wouldn't have been able to do anything to you. Yi Xian pretended to sigh. You despicable person! As the undying Heaven Lord resisted the 3 types of poison, he looked at Yi Xian with a sinister expression. At this moment, he didn't dare to attack Yi Xian. Otherwise, the 3 types of poison would corrode his divine soul. Despicable person? Yi Xian sneered. Undying old thief, you and I are the same in terms of despicableness. However, I, Yi Xian, won't go so far as to use a woman's corpse to threaten you. You? The undying Heaven Lord was stunned. He looked at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. He wanted to curse but couldn't. The undying Heaven Lord wasn't stupid. Just as Yi Xian said, if Yi Xian used the woman in the coffin to threaten him, he would be at Yi Xian's mercy. However, Yi Xian didn't do that. Instead, he used the 3 poisons to scheme against him. At most, he was only using his feelings for the woman in the coffin. The so-called despicable person had nothing to do with Yi Xian. Yi Xian strolled towards the undying Heaven Lord with a calm expression. Under the undying Heaven Lord's complicated gaze, Yi Xian held the half-revered cauldron in his hand. Yi Xian, you've already gotten the item. Why aren't you scramming? Are you waiting for me to kill you? The undying Heaven Lord didn't threaten Yi Xian with the woman's corpse. This made him think highly of Yi Xian. However, the enmity between the 2 of them was irreconcilable. Now that Yi Xian had plotted against him, he was poisoned by the 3 poisons, and the half-revered cauldron was seized by Yi Xian. This was unacceptable to the undying Heaven Lord. If it wasn't for the supreme energy in his body refining the 3 poisons, the undying Heaven Lord would have already killed Yi Xian. Of course, it wasn't that he couldn't make a move. After all, he was an immemorial supreme expert. No matter how powerful the 3 poisons were, it wouldn't stop him from going all out to kill Yi Xian. The reason why the undying Heaven Lord didn't make a move was because, if he couldn't kill Yi Xian, this place would definitely be destroyed. If the woman in the coffin was harmed, this wasn't an outcome that the undying Heaven Lord wanted to see. I didn't expect you to be so infatuated. Although Yi Xian was teasing him, his eyes were filled with killing intent. He knew that this was an excellent opportunity to kill the undying Heaven Lord. Yi Xian, I advise you to leave immediately. Otherwise, when I'm done refining the poisons, I'll definitely destroy your body and soul. The undying Heaven Lord spoke sinisterly. At this moment, he didn't want to make a move against Yi Xian, because he didn't want to see the woman in the coffin suffer any harm. You can go and die first. Yi Xian didn't have so many misgivings and thoughts. Now that the opportunity to kill the undying Heaven Lord was right in front of him, he had to give it a try no matter what. Boom! Eternal reincarnation, the heavens collapsed. Yi Xian directly punched out with the eternal reincarnation fist. The 3 moves of the eternal reincarnation fist were too terrifying. They went straight for the undying Heaven Lord's forehead. You dare! The undying Heaven Lord roared in anger. His body shook, and the power of nirvanic extermination turned into a barrier in front of him. However, a mouthful of black blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Obviously, the 3 types of absolute chaotic poison had a great effect on the undying Heaven Lord. Although they couldn't take his life, they definitely wouldn't let him off easily. Bang! 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 The 3 moves of the eternal reincarnation fist bombarded the black barrier. They only caused the barrier to shake violently. They couldn't break it at all, let alone kill the undying Heaven Lord. One had to admit that the strongest of the ages was indeed terrifying. Even if the undying Heaven Lord was poisoned by the 3 types of absolute chaotic poison, Yi Xian still couldn't hurt him. Let's see how long you can last. Yi Xian coldly roared. The heaven-punishing halberd appeared in his hand. The attack character formula and the tribulation transcender transformation were activated. The profoundness of the 4th move of the eternal reincarnation fist flowed through Yi Xian's mind. Using the halberd as a fist to display the 4th move of the eternal reincarnation fist. With the support of the tribulation transcender transformation and the attack character formula, this was already Yi Xian's most terrifying attack. If this attack couldn't kill the undying Heaven Lord, Yi Xian could only retreat. Qi. The eternal reincarnation sword flashed across. The profound meaning of reincarnation flickered on the tip of the halberd. 80% of Yi Xian's cultivation was poured into the heaven-punishing halberd. The 4th move of the eternal reincarnation fist consumed too much of his cultivation, but Yi Xian still used it. Boom! The heaven-punishing halberd bombarded the black barrier. The profoundness of the 4th move of the eternal reincarnation fist was contained within, accompanied by Yi Xian's terrifying strength. Kacha! The black barrier formed by the power of nirvanic extermination cracked like a spider web. This caused the undying Heaven Lord's expression to change greatly. A low roar came from his mouth. Nirvanic extermination. The undying Heaven Lord refined the 3 types of absolute poison, while using a portion of his cultivation to strengthen the barrier of nirvanic extermination. Chapter 1599. Bang! Boom! A loud explosion sounded out as the black barrier shattered into pieces. Yi Xian's attack was simply too fierce. It contained his cultivation as the heavenly punishing halberd shot towards the center of the undying Heaven Lord's brows. Die! Yi Xian roared excitedly. His eyes turned red. As long as the heaven-punishing halberd pierced through the undying Heaven Lord's forehead, the undying Heaven Lord would die without a doubt. Clang! With a loud explosion, the heavenly extermination halberd ruthlessly smashed into the center of the undying Heaven Lord's brows, but it was unable to advance any further. This caused Yi Xian's ecstatic expression to suddenly freeze, and an extremely terrifying feeling suddenly arose in his heart. Retreat! Yi Xian didn't hesitate in the slightest as he retreated backwards. The heavenly calamity transformation was also executed in an instant. As expected, something terrifying happened. Boom! A small black figure walked out from the undying Heaven Lord's forehead. This figure was only 3 inches tall, but it released a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth. Ultimate Divine Soul. This was the undying Heaven Lord's ultimate divine soul. Facing Yi Xian's killing blow, the undying Heaven Lord could only take the risk and sacrifice his own ultimate divine soul. Clang! The ultimate divine soul was like a miniature version of the undying Heaven Lord. With a punch, it sent the heaven-punishing halberd flying. The terrifying destructive force swept across the sky. Rumble! Something terrifying happened. The ultimate divine soul's attack was so powerful that heaven and earth could not withstand it. The endless void collapsed, and the entire valley turned into ashes. Fortunately, the undying Heaven Lord was wary of the woman in the coffin. He had been guarding the crystal coffin from the start, and did not let his own power affect the woman in the coffin. Yi Xian, do you really want to force me to kill you? At this moment, the undying Heaven Lord's body stiffened. Only his ultimate divine soul remained standing in the void. The 3-inch figure was extremely terrifying. It was releasing a fluctuation that even Yi Xian felt terrified. Die! Boom! Suddenly, the supreme divine soul let out a low roar. He waved his fist and smashed it towards a certain direction, as if he'd found traces of Yi Xian. Chi! In the blink of an eye, Yi Xian dashed off into the distance, dodging that attack with ease. However, that had Yi Xian breaking out in cold sweat. He had not expected that the utmost powerful soul would be this frightening. To think that it could even vaguely sense his location. Fortunately, Heaven Smiting had turned into a forbidden escape art. Even if the undying Heaven Lord summoned his strongest soul, he could only sense a trace of him. He couldn't lock onto his aura at all. However, Yi Xian didn't dare to be careless. If he allowed the undying Heaven Lord to find an opening, he would have no chance of surviving after taking a hit. Old thief, you dare to let your soul leave your body? Aren't you afraid that something will go wrong? Yi Xian said coldly. Yi Xian was very clear that no matter if it was a low-level cultivator or a peerless expert, the soul was the weakest. Once it was damaged in the slightest, it would cause dementia in the lightest case and death in the worst case. They wouldn't even have the chance to possess another body and be reborn. Therefore, no cultivator would allow their soul to leave their body. Gai Tianyuan of the past was the best example. Yi Xian, you've already gotten the item. If you don't leave now, you won't have the chance to do so. The peerless soul spoke sinisterly before turning into a black light and returning to the center of the undying Heaven Lord's forehead. It was obvious that the undying Heaven Lord was extremely wary of Yi Xian. He even used words to threaten Yi Xian to leave. At this moment, Yi Xian furrowed his brows. He really didn't want to let go of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If he did, he was afraid that he wouldn't have such a good opportunity to kill the undying Heaven Lord in the future. However, Yi Xian could also see that it was impossible for him to kill the undying Heaven Lord right now. If he continued to be in a stalemate with the undying Heaven Lord, it would only be a waste of time. Although the Heaven Calamity transformation was powerful, it was merely an escape technique. Moreover, Yi Xian wasn't sure if the undying Heaven Lord had a way to break through his Heaven Calamity transformation. After all, the human Tao Lord was an example. Moreover, Yi Xian had already obtained half a small cauldron from the undying Heaven Lord. He didn't want to take the risk so easily. Undying old thief, if I can't kill you today, then I, Yi Xian, am not as strong as you. However, don't be happy too early. Sooner or later, I will personally kill you. After Yi Xian finished speaking, he didn't have the slightest bit of reluctance, and directly broke through space and left. Yi Xian, this lord will remember you. You better not fall into this lord's hands. Otherwise, this lord will cut you into 1,000 pieces. The undying Heaven Lord muttered hatefully. His sinister eyes flashed continuously as killing intent seeped out of his body. When had the undying Heaven Lord ever suffered such a great loss? Even before he attained the Tao, he had always been the one scheming against others. Who could scheme against him? However, he had suffered a great loss today. If this matter were to spread to the outside world, he would become a huge joke. The undying Heaven Lord spat out a mouthful of turbid qi, and only calmed down after dozens of breaths. Rumble. After 3 days, the undying Heaven Lord finally refined the 3 types of absolute poison. However, his face was slightly pale. It was obvious that he had used up a lot of his cultivation. Despicable thing. So what if you have the heaven-shattering cauldron? You still have to obediently take it back for this lord. The undying Heaven Lord muttered coldly. Xiao Ran, I'm sorry for disturbing your rest. The undying Heaven Lord silently looked at the woman in the coffin. Then, he used a great divine ability to keep the crystal coffin. His entire person turned into a wisp of black smoke and disappeared. Obviously, this place had been found out by Yi Xian. The undying Heaven Lord couldn't continue to keep the woman in the coffin here. Above the dome in the void, Yi Xian sat cross-legged. His face was filled with disappointment and a trace of helplessness. Yi Xian was still brooding over missing the opportunity to kill the undying Heaven Lord. However, Yi Xian also knew that the gap between him and the other party was too big to be able to scheme against the undying Heaven Lord and obtain the half-revered cauldron. This was already a great fortune for Yi Xian. The strongest of all time is indeed the strongest of all time. Wanting to kill the other party with my current cultivation is nothing but a fool's dream. Yi Xian laughed at himself. Yi Xian calmed himself down and his expression turned serious. With a flip of his hand, 2 half-revered cauldrons appeared in his hand. Wang. Something that made Yi Xian excited happened. The small cauldrons gradually merged and shone with a mysterious brilliance. An ancient and boundless aura overflowed from the cauldrons. As the mysterious brilliance gradually faded, a completely intact heaven-shattering cauldron appeared in Yi Xian's hand. Success! Looking at the small cauldron in his hand, Yi Xian muttered excitedly. This was the 6th small cauldron he had obtained. He wondered if this small cauldron contained the forbidden heaven law that Lu Bai had mentioned. Wang. Ripples appeared in the void, and the ancient bronze scripture appeared. Yi Xian nervously moved the small cauldron towards the ancient bronze scripture, hoping that the small cauldron could be imprinted in the ancient bronze scripture. Boom! Suddenly, a strong repulsive force bloomed from Yi Xian's palm. The ancient bronze scripture and the small cauldron separated, as if water and fire were incompatible. As expected, Yi Xian frowned. Although he'd already expected this outcome, he was still extremely disappointed in his heart. Every time the small cauldron and the ancient bronze scripture fused, an opportunity was needed. Obviously, it was the same this time. However, what was the opportunity for the 6th small cauldron? Chapter 1600. Time was like water, passing in the blink of an eye. Yi Xian was studying the 6th cauldron every day, hoping to comprehend the opportunity within, and hoping that the 6th cauldron contained the forbidden heaven law he wanted. However, Yi Xian didn't know that a crisis was quietly approaching. Undying Heaven Palace. Everything was silent and oppressive. Undying Heaven Lord sat cross-legged in the void, wearing a black robe. His expression was emotionless, but when his eyes occasionally opened and closed, they flashed with dense killing intent. Heaven Lord, we've brought them back. A series of footsteps came from the outside, and the Undying Heaven Palace Lord and several Undyings escorted 2 criminals into the Heaven Palace. If Yi Xian was here, he would definitely recognize these 2 criminals. They were Yuan Ling and Luo Ho. Raise your heads, Undying Heaven Lord said coldly. Greetings, Heaven Lord. Yuan Ling and Luo Ho's faces were pale as they bowed to Undying Heaven Lord. One had to know that they were once members of the Undying Heaven Palace, and they were ordered by Undying Heaven Lord to kill Pengu, which led to the wilderness world later on. Look at what you've done. Peng. Undying Heaven Lord roared coldly and smashed the cloud table in front of him with a palm. Extremely terrifying killing intent overflowed, and this made Yuan Ling and Luo Ho's hearts tremble. Undying Heaven Lord was too great in their hearts, and they were afraid of this strongest of all time. Now that they were captured and brought back to the Undying Heaven Palace, they were already prepared to have their souls destroyed. It turned out that when Yi Xian used the Heaven Calamity Change to wreak havoc in the Undying Heaven Palace, Undying Heaven Lord couldn't do anything to Yi Xian. Undying Heaven Lord came up with a vicious plan and ordered several Undyings to capture Yuan Ling and Luo Ho, who were related to Yi Xian. Originally, Yuan Ling and Luo Ho had been cultivating in the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace. Logically speaking, with the Extreme Emotion Master there, these undying beings should not have been able to capture the 2 of them and bring them back to the Undying Heavenly Palace. Unfortunately, Extreme Love Master also needed to cultivate, so he couldn't stay in the Extreme Love Heavenly Palace all the time. The Immortals found a chance to sneak into the Extreme Love Heavenly Palace and easily captured the 2. The 2 of you, send a message to Yi Xian and tell him to come here immediately. The Undying Heaven Lord said darkly. His original intention was to use the two of them as hostages. If Yi Xian didn't hand over the heavenly shattering cauldron, he would kill the two of them. If you want to kill us, then kill us. We really don't know where Yi Xian is. Yuan Ling's face was pale, but he still refused. It wasn't that Yuan Ling and Yi Xian had a deep relationship, but that Yi Xian had grown to his current level. He had become Yuan Ling's greatest pride. Yuan Ling was Yi Xian's mentor and guide in life. Only Yuan Ling himself knew this feeling. He had been too mediocre in his life, and only Yi Xian was his disciple. Even if he died, he didn't want Yi Xian to die prematurely on his path to becoming the strongest of all time. You have some backbone, you ant. Do you really think I don't dare to kill you? Boom! The undying Heaven Lord's face was filled with anger. His supreme transcendence eyes flashed terrifyingly. Yuan Ling's entire body rose into the air. His body expanded terrifyingly, as if he was about to explode on the spot. Undying Heaven Lord, kill me if you want. Faced with the undying Heaven Lord's murderous intent, Yuan Ling threw caution to the wind. He endured the pain of his body exploding and roared angrily at the undying Heaven Lord. Bang! All of a sudden, Yuan Ling fell heavily to the ground. The undying Heaven Lord didn't want to take his life. You ant, you have some backbone. Don't worry, I won't kill you. If you die, how am I going to kill that bastard Yi Xian? The undying Heaven Lord said coldly. Men, hang them above the heavenly gates, and roast them with the sun-moon divine fire, until Yi Xian comes to save them. The undying Heaven Lord ordered. We obey the Heavenly Lord's decree. Several undying immortals bowed, and directly carried Yuan Ling and Luo Ho out of the heavenly palace. Yi Xian, unless you don't want their lives, I'll tear you to pieces as soon as you appear. The undying Heaven Lord muttered sinisterly. On this day, the undying Heaven Palace spread the news that the two traitors would be hung above the heavenly gates and roasted with divine fire day and night as a warning to the world. This news spread rapidly across the entire Central Territory. Yuan Ling and Luo Ho's names were also known by everyone. However, the various orthodoxies found it strange that the undying Heaven Palace had just suffered a massacre. Why would they take care of two small fries with such great fanfare? On the other side, thousands of miles away, the sky was silent. Yi Xian was still comprehending the sixth small cauldron. However, his brows were tightly knitted together, as he couldn't find any clues. Moreover, he had already wasted 10 years. Although it was nothing compared to Yi Xian's long cultivation journey, meditating on the small cauldron like this made him extremely frustrated. Suddenly, a spiritual light broke through space and appeared in front of Yi Xian. It instantly brought him back to his senses as a communication jade slip appeared in his hand. Extreme emotion? Yi Xian's expression changed slightly as he quickly read the contents of the jade slip. Soon, the jade slip in Yi Xian's hand turned to dust. His expression was extremely cold as he put away the small cauldron and disappeared in a beam of rainbow light. At the peak of Broken Cloud Mountain, the extreme emotion master, Yi Qingmei, stood there. She looked down at the sea of clouds in front of her and seemed to be deep in thought. Yi Xian quietly appeared behind the extreme emotion master. This also brought the extreme emotion master back to his senses, and he turned to look at Yi Xian. Sir, I'm useless. I didn't protect the two of them well, the extreme emotion master said apologetically. How are the two of them now? Yi Xian calmed himself down and asked. The undying Heaven Lord used his divine flames to roast the two of them day and night. His goal was to force you to appear. However, sir, you can be at ease. I will personally ask him for them. Sir, there is no need to fall for his tricks, Yi Qingmei said. You're no match for him. Yi Xian slowly shook his head. After experiencing so many things, he had a great understanding of the strongest of all ages. The extreme emotion master was the strongest, but she was the weakest of the 10. Even if she personally went to save the two of them, she wouldn't be able to save them from the undying Heaven Lord. Don't worry, sir. Although I'm no match for him, it shouldn't be too difficult to save the two of them. I summoned you here because I hope you won't be rash. You can't fall into the undying Heaven Lord's trap, Yi Qingmei reminded him. Yi Xian could see the affection in the extreme emotion master's eyes, But Yi Xian knew that this time was different. He stole the Undying Heaven Lord's heaven-shattering cauldron and ruthlessly plotted against him. The Undying Heaven Lord had kidnapped Yuan Ling and Luo Ho to force him to appear. Even if the Extreme Emotion Master and the Undying Heaven Lord fought, he wouldn't let the two of them go. Only if he personally appeared could he truly save the two of them. Yuan Ling is my teacher, Yi Xian said in a low voice. I can't just watch him die for me. Luo Ho and I have known each other for many years. I can't just sit by and watch. Hearing Yi Xian's words, the Extreme Emotion Master frowned. She knew that once Yi Xian decided on something, he wouldn't change his mind. Even if she tried to persuade him otherwise, it would be useless. Chapter 1601. Mister, you can hide in the shadows. When I fight the Undying Heaven Lord, you can cure the two of them of their drunkenness. The Extreme Love Master offered a compromise. All right. Yi Xian nodded slowly. This was also the safest method. In fact, Yi Xian didn't expect the Undying Heaven Lord to kidnap Yuan Ling and Luo Ho to force him to show himself. This seemed like a simple method, but it was indeed useful to Yi Xian. Because other than Lu Bai, Yi Xian also cared about Yuan Ling. The relationship between Yi Xian and Yuan Ling was too complicated. The two of them were both master and foe, entangling Yi Xian for the first half of his life. Without Yuan Ling, there would be no Yi Xian. When Yi Xian was young, he should have died, but Yuan Ling's appearance changed his life. Although Yuan Ling had bad intentions at the time, in reality, without Yuan Ling, there would be no Yi Xian today. Therefore, Yi Xian had to save his life mentor. He couldn't let Yuan Ling die because of him. Undying Heaven Palace, the vast heavenly gate. Divine fire filled the sky, scorching and terrifying. Divine fire raged in the sky. Yuan Ling and Luo Ho were roasted by the sun-moon divine fire, and from time to time, they would cry out in pain. The sun-moon divine fire was an extreme form of torture. It was a punishment used by the Undying Heaven Palace to punish traitors. It could make one's soul scatter and die in endless pain. However, under the Undying Heaven Lord's orders, the sun-moon divine fire didn't harm the two of them. It only tortured them cruelly. This was because Yi Xian would only appear if the two of them were alive. Two dead people were of no value to the Undying Heaven Lord. Rumble. 9-colored divine light pierced through the sky. The Extreme Love Master's position covered the sky and earth. In an instant, the Undying Heaven Palace's alarm bells rang. Extreme Love, you shouldn't have come. Boom. In the next moment, the Undying Heaven Lord suddenly appeared in the sky above the Heaven Gate. He stared into the distance, his eyes indifferent to the extreme. Budi, let the two of them go. Otherwise, there will be a battle between us. The Extreme Love Master arrived, and the strongest power of all time bloomed. Everything within billions of miles shook. Clearly, she wasn't just joking. Extreme Love, you are not my opponent. I advise you to mind your own business. The Undying Heaven Lord calmly spoke. He glanced at his surroundings and spoke in a low and sinister voice. Yi Xian, this Lord knows that you are here. If you don't want the two of them to die, you better come out now. Boom. Heaven and earth trembled, and the universe was devoid of light. Extreme Love Master waved her hand and 9 beams of extreme love power shot towards the Undying Heaven Master. You still have a long way to go. Facing Extreme Love Master's attack, Undying Heaven Lord growled coldly. The Undying Heaven blade appeared in his hand, and he slashed out 100,000-mile blade light at Extreme Love Master. Boom! The two utmost powerful beings had overturned the heavens with a single strike. A power that could destroy the heavens, and the earth burst forth and spread out in all directions, causing an extremely devastating blow. It was also at this moment that Yi Xian appeared in the sky above the Heaven Gate. The heaven-destroying halberd swept out, wanting to save Yuan Ling and Luo Ho. Yi Xian, this lord has been waiting for you for a long time. Boom. Suddenly, the Undying Heaven Lord appeared in front of Yi Xian in an instant. His 5 fingers slammed down on Yi Xian. The terrifying destructive power sealed the sky and locked down the earth, wanting to suppress Yi Xian on the spot. Fortunately, Yi Xian had long since expected the Undying Heaven Lord to be extremely difficult to deal with. He was even on guard against the other party's schemes, so he instantly activated the Heavenly Calamity transformation and barely dodged the Undying Heaven Lord's terrifying attack. Your opponent is me. The Extreme Love Master's jade fingers flew, and the world was in chaos. The terrifying power of extreme love filled the sky and shot towards the Undying Heaven Lord. Stop! The Undying Heaven Lord blasted the Extreme Love Master back thousands of miles. He appeared in front of Yuan Ling and Luo Ho, directly holding them hostage. The Extreme Love Master flew back, his beautiful face covered in frost. He couldn't attack the Undying Heaven Lord for fear of harming the innocent. Otherwise, Yuan Ling and Luo Ho's lives would be affected. Undying Heaven Lord, you're one of the strongest throughout history. How could you do such a despicable thing? Aren't you afraid of being ridiculed by the world? The Extreme Love Master said coldly. Unfortunately, the Undying Heaven Lord didn't react to the Extreme Love Master's mockery. He pressed his hands on the top of their heads, and a terrifying destructive power faintly overflowed. Yi Xian, this lord doesn't want to waste time talking nonsense. If you don't want these two to die, hand over the heaven-shattering cauldron. The Undying Heaven Lord said sinisterly, his voice echoing in all directions. Obviously, the Undying Heaven Lord's real goal was to take back the small cauldron, and he wanted to personally tear Yi Xian into pieces. However, the Undying Heaven Lord was also very calm. He knew that Yi Xian was the same kind of person as him. He wouldn't exchange his life for the cauldron. As expected, buzz! Yi Xian walked out of the void. He looked calmly at the Undying Heaven Lord, and there was no trace of panic on his face. Undying old thief, you're really funny. Do you think that by using these two to threaten me, I'll give you the heaven-shattering cauldron? Yi Xian sneered. Yi Xian, this lord knows your past. This Yuan Ling is your first teacher. Are you willing to let him die for you? The Undying Heaven Lord said sinisterly. This was a psychological battle. It depended on whether Yi Xian cared about the lives of Yuan Ling and Luo Ho. The Undying Heaven Lord was also observing Yi Xian's expression, hoping to see Yi Xian panic. Unfortunately, the Undying Heaven Lord was disappointed. Since Yi Xian appeared here, he had been very calm, so calm that there wasn't the slightest ripple in his expression. Every man for himself. You can try killing the two of them. Don't be delusional if you want me to hand over the heaven-shattering cauldron. Yi Xian sneered. Although Yi Xian said so, and his face was full of disdain, he was actually very nervous. He was really afraid that the Undying Heaven Lord would kill Yuan Ling and Luo Ho in a fit of rage. However, Yi Xian was betting. He was betting that the Undying Heaven Lord wouldn't kill Yuan Ling and Luo Ho, because the two of them were just small characters to the Undying Heaven Lord. The other party's real target was him. If he killed Yuan Ling and Luo Ho, the Undying Heaven Lord wouldn't even have the chance to negotiate with Yi Xian. In the end, it would be like drawing water with a bamboo basket. Do you really think this lord doesn't dare to kill them? The Undying Heaven Lord roared coldly. A terrifying destructive force erupted, causing Yuan Ling and Luo Ho to groan in pain. Their bodies expanded at a terrifying speed. Yi Xian's heart trembled, but his expression remained calm. He knew that he couldn't show any signs of panic. Otherwise, the Undying Heaven Lord would be fearless. He was sure that the Undying Heaven Lord was just bluffing, so he had to remain calm. Kill them if you have the ability. But I'm warning you, I Yi Xian will remember today's matter. I'll settle it with you in the future. Yi Xian said indifferently. You? The Undying Heaven Lord's breath stopped. He didn't expect Yi Xian to be so ruthless. He didn't even care about the life of his master. This made it difficult for him to get off. Chapter 1602. Kill. Or not. The Undying Heaven Lord's face was gloomy as he struggled internally. Killing two ants wouldn't benefit him at all. It would only force Yi Xian to flee far away, not to mention taking back the heaven-shattering cauldron. If he didn't kill, at this moment, Yi Xian was fearless as if he didn't care at all. This was simply a provocation to his prestige. Good disciple, master didn't misjudge you, ha ha ha. Yuan Ling laughed maniacally. He didn't feel any resentment towards Yi Xian's ruthless words. Instead, he praised his disciple. The so-called cultivation was to go against the heavens, to abandon everything that would affect one's cultivation, and only focus on reaching the peak. There was no such thing as a perfect way to live up to Rulai and Qing Qing. This was just an empty phrase. On the path to the peak of primal chaos, one had to face many choices. Some choices could allow one to move forward bravely, while others could consign one to eternal damnation. There was no such thing as having the best of both worlds. If you wanted something, you would have to give something in return. Yuan Ling was Yi Xian's life mentor. Yuan Ling had watched Yi Xian grow up step by step, so Yuan Ling understood this principle very well. If Yi Xian was soft-hearted today, and was willing to be held hostage by the undying Heaven Lord to save him and Luo Ho, Yuan Ling would be disappointed. Master, don't worry. If you fall here today, I will use this old bastard's head to worship you in the future. Yi Xian said indifferently. Ha ha ha. Yuan Ling laughed loudly and said, Good, good, good. I'm just an ant. If I can use the head of the strongest expert in history to worship you, then Master's life won't be in vain. Are you courting death? The undying Heaven Lord's face turned ashen. He was truly angered by this pair of master and disciple. His 5 fingers suddenly pressed down on Yuan Ling's head, and a terrifying destructive force pressed down on Yuan Ling's body. Come, kill me and completely sever his final thoughts. Let him truly have no worries, and be able to move forward courageously. Yuan Ling roared sinisterly. Damn it! The undying Heaven Lord's killing intent surged, but he couldn't make a move. It wasn't that he didn't dare to kill Yuan Ling, but just as Yuan Ling said, once he killed Yuan Ling and Yuan Ling, Yi Xian would lose his last bargaining chip. Undying old bastard, your heart, you're still not ruthless enough, your heart's poison. What do you have to fight me in the future? Yi Xian, you're courting death. The undying Heaven Lord was enraged. His 5 fingers suddenly slammed down on Yi Xian, and a terrifying destructive force swept across the sky, bringing with it the power to destroy everything. Yi Xian attacked. Qi. The Heaven Calamity transformation was executed, and Yi Xian instantly disappeared. The undying Heaven Lord wanted to kill him, but it was just wishful thinking. Want to kill me? Do you have the ability? Yi Xian's voice reverberated in all directions, but the undying Heaven Lord couldn't detect his existence at all. Face slapping. A naked slap to the face. At this moment, the elders and disciples of the undying Heaven Palace were all watching from afar. Their fiery gazes made the undying Heaven Lord's face turn ashen, and his anger reached the peak. Who was he? He was one of the strongest experts in history. He was the undying Heaven Lord. Even the other strongest experts had to be wary of him. But today, he was ridiculed by Yi Xian. How could he accept this? Undying, either you kill the 2 of them, or you let them go. The extreme emotion master strolled over. Her strongest aura was concealed, and her beautiful eyes looked at the undying Heaven Lord. Undying old bastard, why don't we both take a step back? Yi Xian appeared once again, but this time, there was a small cauldron in his hand. It was the result of the undying Heaven Lord's scheme. Take a step back. The undying Heaven Lord's face darkened. He was indeed riding a tiger, and he couldn't get off. He wanted to use Yuan Ling and Yi Xian to threaten Yi Xian, but he couldn't achieve his goal. At this moment, Yi Xian's face was calm, and his eyes were as deep as an ancient lake. In fact, he didn't want to push the undying Heaven Lord too far, because he was indeed here to save Yuan Ling and Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian was also prepared for the worst. He definitely wouldn't allow himself to be captured without a fight. If the undying Heaven Lord really killed Yuan Ling and Luo Ho, Yi Xian would turn and leave without another word. He could only avenge them in the future. Don't say that Yi Xian was ruthless. Yi Xian understood the situation very well. If he was threatened by the undying Heaven Lord, and chose to be captured without a fight, not only would he die, Yuan Ling and Luo Ho would also die. Therefore, Yi Xian wouldn't be threatened by the undying Heaven Lord. If he died, how could he save Lu Bai? However, there was still a great chance for things to turn around. Because the undying Heaven Lord hadn't killed Yuan Ling and Yi Xian, this proved that the other party was also very cautious. You want the heaven-shattering cauldron, but I can't give it to you. However, you, me, and extreme emotion can comprehend it together. Whoever comprehends it first will have the heaven-shattering cauldron. And my condition is very simple. Release the two of them, what do you think? Yi Xian spoke frankly. He believed that the undying Heaven Lord could weigh the pros and cons, and would definitely agree. The reason was simple. Killing Yuan Ling and Yi Xian wouldn't benefit the undying Heaven Lord at all. It would only create an even greater enmity with Yi Xian. Not only would Yi Xian disappear without a trace, but the heaven-shattering cauldron would also be taken away. As long as the undying Heaven Lord wasn't a fool, he would know what to do. Sure enough, the undying Heaven Lord was stunned at first, and his expression changed continuously before gradually calming down. No one could tell whether he was happy or angry. How can I believe you? The undying Heaven Lord asked solemnly. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. However, I have always been a man of my words. As long as you release them, I will naturally stay here with extreme emotion. The three of us will comprehend the small cauldron together for 10,000 years. If you don't gain anything after 10,000 years, I will take the small cauldron and leave. Yi Xian said calmly. All right. The undying Heaven Lord didn't say anything else. He had no other choice. Using hostages to threaten Yi Xian was impossible, so he could only settle for the next best thing. In terms of ruthlessness, although the undying Heaven Lord didn't want to admit it, he was indeed inferior to Yi Xian. This made him even more vigilant against Yi Xian. Being ruthless didn't mean anything. In this world, ruthless people were as common as carps crossing the river. Being able to be ruthless and calmly weigh the pros and cons was the reason why the undying Heaven Lord was wary of Yi Xian. Wang. The undying Heaven Lord dispersed the sun-moon divine fire and undid the restrictions on Yuan Ling and Luo Ho. This caused the two of them to fall weakly from the sky. However, the extreme emotion master waved her hand and froze the two of them in midair. Then, they landed steadily beside her. Yi Xian took a step forward and appeared beside the extreme emotion master at the same time. He smiled at Yuan Ling and Luo Ho. I didn't expect my luck to be so good. I actually managed to survive the hands of the strongest throughout history. Yuan Ling smiled helplessly. Yi Daoyu, I've implicated you, Luo Ho said apologetically. I've implicated the two of you, Yi Xian said softly. Yi Xian, fulfill your promise, the undying Heaven Lord said from afar. He wasn't sure if Yi Xian would go back on his word. If Yi Xian did, he really wouldn't be able to do anything to Yi Xian. Chapter 1603. You two go back to the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace and cultivate. We'll meet again in the future, Yi Xian reminded Yuan Ling and Luo Ho. Be careful, Yuan Ling said with a heavy expression. Don't worry, this old thief can't do anything to me. Also, the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace is here, Yi Xian comforted. Boom. The Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace directly broke through the void and used greater teleportation to send Yuan Ling and Luo Ho away. After that, she and Yi Xian exchanged glances and walked towards the undying Heaven Lord. Yi Xian would naturally keep his promise, but only he knew his bigger goal. He had been studying the sixth cauldron for several years and had never been able to understand its mysteries. Now that two paragons were here, the three of them might be able to find a chance to study it together. Not only could they save Yuan Ling and Luo Ho, but they could also use the undying Heaven Lord to study the cauldron. This was killing two birds with one stone. Also, with the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace accompanying them, it was the same as hiring a bodyguard. If the undying Heaven Lord wanted to harm him, the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace would be able to stop him. Yi Xian could also use the Calamity Transformation to escape safely. All of this was within Yi Xian's calculations. The three of them studied the cauldron together for 10,000 years. Even if they couldn't understand its mysteries, Yi Xian had kept his promise. Even if the undying Heaven Lord didn't have the face to force them to stay, could he and the Extreme Emotion Heavenly Palace stay? Yi Xian, I admit that I underestimated you. I hope you won't fall into my hands in the future, the undying Heaven Lord said calmly. The undying Heaven Lord calmly said. He took a deep look at Yi Xian, then flicked his sleeve, and walked towards the Immortal Heavenly Palace. Old thief, this is what I wanted to say to you as well. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, causing the Undying Heaven Lord to feel suffocated. Yi Xian kept on calling the Undying Heaven Lord an old thief, not putting him, a supreme expert of the ancient era, in his eyes at all. How could the Undying Heaven Lord not be enraged? However, he couldn't do anything to Yi Xian at this moment. If he were to engage in a war of words with Yi Xian, it would instead lower his status. Humph! The Undying Heaven Lord coldly snorted, then turned into a wisp of black smoke, and entered the heavenly palace of immortality. Yi Xian and the Extreme Love Lord looked at each other, then followed closely behind. Celestial Palace of Immortality. It was empty and silent, and the atmosphere was stifling. Undying Heaven Master sat cross-legged in the void while Yi Xian and Extreme Love Master sat side by side. When the three of them looked at each other, the void around them was slightly distorted. Take out the little cauldron, the Undying Heaven Lord said coldly. Wang. The sixth cauldron appeared and floated in the void. A mysterious and ancient radiance flowed on the cauldron, giving off an indescribable aura. Do you know how much effort I've put in to get this heaven-shattering cauldron? The Undying Heaven Lord said coldly. I'm just here to fulfill my promise. I'm not here to listen to your nonsense, Yi Xian said indifferently. All right, then the three of us will rely on our own abilities, the Undying Heaven Lord sneered. Boom! The Nirvana power was unleashed and instantly wrapped around the cauldron. Extreme Love Master didn't want to be left behind. He also unleashed a wisp of extreme love power, hoping to comprehend the secrets of the cauldron as soon as possible. At this moment, Yi Xian's eyes were deep. He wasn't in a hurry to comprehend the cauldron, because he had been doing it for many years, and hadn't found any opportunity at all. At this moment, the two supreme experts were using their supreme powers to comprehend the cauldron. Yi Xian was just observing quietly at the side, hoping to find some useful clues. Wang. The cauldron vibrated in the void, creating waves and waves. Occasionally, it would let out a boundless sound that would cause one's soul to tremble. Yi Xian stabilized his soul, and opened his Dharma Eye of Destruction to observe the mysterious patterns on the cauldron's body. This sixth cauldron was way too strange. Yi Xian could be said to have used all kinds of methods, but he still couldn't make the cauldron fuse with the Bronze Immortal Sutra, let alone comprehend the secrets within. Time passed by slowly. In the blink of an eye, 100 years had passed. In this 100 years, the two supreme experts had used all kinds of methods, but they still couldn't comprehend the secrets within the cauldron. This was especially so for the Undying Heaven Lord. His eyes were a little red. He used all kinds of secret techniques, and even his supreme soul, hoping to activate the opportunity within the cauldron. Unfortunately, the cauldron didn't react at all. At most, there would be some mysterious sounds coming from the cauldron. However, it was useless to the three of them. How laughable. You went through so much trouble to find this cauldron. Now you can't even comprehend it, Yi Xian mocked coldly. Yi Xian, I don't want to argue with you. What do you think the heaven-shattering cauldron is? How many people in this world can comprehend it? The Undying Heaven Lord said coldly. This cauldron is indestructible. It can isolate all kinds of power. It won't be easy to comprehend it. The Extreme Love Master sighed. Indestructible. Suddenly, the Extreme Love Master's words were like a bolt of lightning that hit Yi Xian hard. This also made him freeze on the spot, as if he had caught a glimpse of an opportunity. Rumble. The two supreme experts attacked again. An incomparably mysterious aura spread out, and a new round of comprehension began. However, Yi Xian frowned. He finally discovered the secret that the cauldron couldn't comprehend. Chapter 1604. Calm down. Yi Xian warned himself to calm down. He mustn't let the Undying Heaven Master sense the change in him. Huff. Yi Xian slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He finally calmed down. Since he had discovered that the cauldron was sealed, Yi Xian's eyes lit up. As long as he could break the seal, he would be able to decipher the secrets of the cauldron. However, it was extremely difficult for Yi Xian to break the seal, because it was a seal set by a forbidden character. With his current cultivation base, it was wishful thinking to break the seal. But in the next moment, Yi Xian's lips curled into a strange smile. He looked at the Undying Heaven Master with a playful look. Although he couldn't break the seal, the Undying Heaven Master might be able to do so. Damn it! Suddenly, the Undying Heaven Master let out a low growl. He stopped his cultivation and sat in the void with a gloomy face. The Undying Heaven Master had spent 1,000 years trying to decipher the cauldron, but to no avail. This made him feel extremely helpless. Heh, what are you laughing at? The Undying Heaven Master frowned because the laughter came from Yi Xian. This made him look at Yi Xian with a gloomy face. I'm laughing at the fact that you can't even decipher the secrets of the cauldron. Even if I give you 10,000 years, I'm afraid you won't be able to do anything. Yi Xian said indifferently. The heaven-shattering cauldron is a treasure of chaos. It's not something that can be deciphered overnight. Besides, you didn't gain anything either. The Undying Heaven Master said coldly. Who said that I didn't gain anything? Yi Xian raised his eyebrows. The Undying Heaven Master's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that you have deciphered the secrets of the cauldron? Of course. Yi Xian nodded slowly. Sir. The Extreme Love Master's face changed. He didn't expect Yi Xian to have deciphered the secrets of the cauldron. But why did he tell the Undying Heaven Master? Yi Xian, did you really comprehend the mystery of the small cauldron? The Undying Heaven Lord's aura became chaotic as he narrowed his eyes. A sharp killing intent flashed across his eyes, but it did not escape Yi Xian's eyes. However, Yi Xian acted as if he hadn't noticed, and he pointed at the tiny cauldron instead and said, Look, the striations on this cauldron are simple and mysterious. Yet this striation is slightly out of place. If I'm not wrong, this tiny cauldron was once sealed by someone, so we're unable to comprehend its profundities. Seal. The two supreme beings were taken aback. Then, following Yi Xian's instructions, they carefully studied the patterns on the cauldron. After a long while, the two of them finally regained their senses. That's right, Extreme Love Master said, nodding slowly. There is something strange about this pattern. It was obviously added by someone else, and it can even block my divine sense. Who placed the seal? The Undying Heaven Lord was no fool. He instantly thought of many things, and his expression turned solemn. Clearly, he had deduced that it was a forbidden character who had sealed the small cauldron. The two supreme beings were deep in thought, and their expressions were somewhat solemn. Yi Xian was able to deduce that the small cauldron was cut into two by a forbidden character, and then sealed. The two supreme beings were no fools. After his reminder, they naturally came to this conclusion as well. At this moment, Yi Xian remained silent. His expression was calm, but he already had a plan in his mind. In fact, Yi Xian did not want to reveal the secret of the small cauldron's seal. However, if he did not reveal this secret, he would not be able to use the Undying Heaven Lord to break the seal. Now, only by breaking the seal can we obtain the secret of the small cauldron. Yi Xian said calmly. Yi Xian, do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? The Undying Heaven Lord was extremely shrewd. Since Yi Xian could reveal the secret of the small cauldron's seal, it was clear that he wanted to use him to break the seal. When Yi Xian broke the seal and took away the small cauldron, wouldn't he suffer a great loss? After all, the Heaven Calamity transformation made the Undying Heaven Lord unable to do anything to Yi Xian. Moreover, Yi Xian had the Extreme Love Master by his side. He would not be so foolish as to be used by Yi Xian. If we don't break the seal, neither of us will be able to obtain the item in the cauldron. Therefore, I hope that we can trust each other and work together to break the seal. Yi Xian said coldly. What a joke. This small cauldron has always been entangled by your aura. If you break the seal and take the small cauldron away, wouldn't I have made a wedding dress for you? Do you think I'm an idiot? Boom. Before the Undying Heaven Lord could finish, he was stunned and his words came to an abrupt halt. This was because Yi Xian had actually withdrawn his aura from the small cauldron. At this moment, the small cauldron had become an ownerless item. Can you rest assured now? Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Yi Xian, I have truly underestimated you. The Undying Heaven Lord came back to his senses and praised. There's no need to talk nonsense. Right now, the only thing we can do is break the seal. When the time comes, whoever has the ability to comprehend the secrets inside the cauldron will have to rely on their own abilities. Yi Xian waved his hand. When it came to serious matters, the undying Heaven Lord no longer cared about Yi Xian's attitude. He became solemn all over. If this small cauldron is sealed by a forbidden character, it will be extremely difficult to break the seal. However, with me and extreme love here, it's not impossible. The undying Heaven Lord said in a deep voice. This cauldron's seal is related to a formation. Although I'm not as strong as the two of you, I should be able to help with formations and restrictions. Yi Xian said. Let's do it. Boom. The Extreme Love Master's jade-like hand flew up and pressed on the cauldron. The Extreme Love Master's terrifying power overflowed and gushed towards the runes on the cauldron. Chi. At the same time, the undying Heaven Lord also made his move. He pointed out a finger, and a strand of nirvana power gushed towards the runes. Buzz. In the next moment, something that shocked the three of them happened. The small cauldron shook in the void. Then, an extremely terrifying death ray burst out and covered the entire cauldron. Break it. The undying Heaven Lord's face brightened. The terrifying nirvana power gushed out crazily. The Extreme Love Master also made her move. The two supreme powers wanted to break the seal by force. Rumble. Under the explosion of the two supreme powers, the entire undying heaven palace rumbled, as if it was going to collapse at any time. The surrounding void was exploding and regenerating. If not for the two supreme powers controlling their own powers, this world would have been reduced to nothing. Boom. Boom. It was as if the tempestuous waves of the ages were surging over, as if the stars and universe were exploding. The two supreme experts were exerting their terrifying strength as they continuously bombarded the light of death that covered the small cauldron. Unfortunately, this forbidden seal was too strong. No matter how the two supreme powers attacked, they couldn't break it. This forbidden seal can't be broken by brute force alone. Suddenly, Yi Xian frowned and stopped the two of them from continuing to attack the seal. You make it sound easy, but if we don't use brute force, how can we break the seal? The undying Heaven Lord looked at Yi Xian coldly. With the sky as the array, and the earth as the law, the so-called array restriction contains the truth of heaven and earth. It is also all-encompassing. Moreover, this is a seal set by a forbidden figure. Only by finding the flaw in it can we truly break the seal. After finishing his words, Yi Xian quickly formed a seal with both hands. A strand of mysterious starlight bloomed on his body. At the same time, his clone in the southern Do Great region opened his eyes. The original body and clone were mentally connected. The profound meaning of the astral origin spell kept flowing through Yi Xian's mind. Chapter 1605. If he wanted to break the seal, he would need the help of the astral origin art. After all, Chaos Star Masters walked the path of formations and restrictions, borrowing the power of the chaotic universe. However, ever since the appearance of the chess ancestor, Yi Xian had a vague fear of the astral origin art. After all, the legacy of Chaos Star Masters was created by the chess ancestor. However, in order to break the seal, Yi Xian could only use his avatar, because only the astral origin art could help him break the seal. Chi. Starlight filled the world, and everything fell silent. Yi Xian shot a ray of starlight at the small cauldron with a solemn expression. This ray of starlight wrapped around the cauldron, and surprisingly, the seal didn't reject it. Chaos Star Master. The undying Heaven Lord was stunned. He looked at Yi Xian with an abnormally deep gaze. Then he went silent, and no one knew what he was thinking. Chi. 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 Yi Xian pointed his finger like a sword, and rays of starlight shot out from his finger, gathering into a mysterious starlight rune that pressed down on the small cauldron. Condense! Yi Xian roared. The starlight rune and the seal intertwined, and then an extremely complicated black rune appeared. Qian as the sky, Kuan as the earth. Reverse Qian and Kuan, and you can break the seal. Yi Xian let out a low roar, causing the two supreme experts to instantly wake up. Yi Xian was reminding the two of them to break the seal. Boom! The two paragons attacked. The two paragons of extreme emotion and nirvana poured into the black rune, and then crazily destroyed the rune that had appeared. Crack! A horrifying crack appeared within the black formation patterns. This caused the three of them to feel invigorated. The two utmost powerful beings were even more frenzied, as they channeled their utmost powers into the black formation patterns, causing the crack to grow bigger and bigger. Boom! After a few dozen breaths, with a deafening sound, the black rune exploded, and the small cauldron appeared. Bang! Yi Xian's entire body was blasted flying, and fiercely smashed onto the ground. His cultivation was simply too weak. He didn't have the time to defend against the aftermath of breaking the seal. Yi Xian, thank you very much. Suddenly, the undying Heaven Lord let out a sinister laugh. His 5 fingers suddenly reached for the small cauldron. It was obvious that he wanted to snatch the small cauldron. How dare you? Extreme Love Master wasn't going to let Undying God Master get what he wanted. She reached for the cauldron as well. At this moment, now that the seal had been broken, as long as one could obtain the small cauldron, the secrets contained within the small cauldron would naturally belong to that person. When Yi Xian used the astral origin art, the Undying Heaven Lord had already decided that once the seal was broken, it would be time for him, Yi Xian, and the Extreme Love Master to fall out. Boom! Almost at the same time, the Undying Heaven Master and the Extreme Love Master grabbed the cauldron at the same time. The two supreme powers erupted at the same time. Extreme Love, you're still far from it. The Undying God Lord laughed maniacally. Terrifying nirvana power burst forth as he slammed his palm towards the Extreme Emotion Master. Bang! The Extreme Love Master raised her hand and slammed it towards the Undying Heaven Lord as well. The two supreme powers clashed, and the entire Undying Heaven Palace collapsed. The heaven-shattering cauldron is mine! The Undying Heaven Lord laughed maniacally. His palm exploded with destructive power as he slammed it towards the Extreme Love Master. Bang! The Undying Heaven Lord was too terrifying. Although the Extreme Love Master was also one of the strongest throughout the ages, she was still weaker than the Undying Heaven Lord. The attack sent her flying, and the small cauldron fell into the Undying Heaven Lord's hand. Ha ha ha. At this moment, with the small cauldron in his hand and the seal broken, the Undying Heaven Lord laughed loudly. The depression in his chest completely dissipated, and the gaze he used to look at Yi Xian and the Extreme Emotion Lord was filled with extreme contempt. Undying old thief, it's too early for you to be happy. Buzz! All of a sudden, a ray of green light appeared. It was the ancient bronze scripture. At this moment, the pages of the scripture were flipping violently, and an indescribable mysterious aura overflowed. Withdraw! No heaven, no earth, no trace. The small cauldron in the Undying Heaven Lord's hand suddenly turned into a ray of mysterious light, and shot towards the ancient bronze scripture. Even the Undying Heaven Lord couldn't stop it in time. Buzz! In the blink of an eye, the small cauldron had already merged with the ancient bronze scripture. Yi Xian immediately put it away, and activated the heaven-smiting transformation, disappearing without a trace. Let's go! Yi Xian's voice sounded in the Extreme Love Master's ear. In an instant, the two broke through the void and fled, leaving the Undying Heaven Lord stunned on the spot. Huff huff huff. After a full 10 breaths of time, the Undying Heaven Lord's dazed expression gradually turned ashen. He panted like a wild beast, and his eyes were as red as blood. Yi Xian! His roar could shatter mountains and rivers, and his hatred was higher than the heavens. The Undying Heaven Lord's expression was ferocious and terrifying. A terrifying force of nirvanic destruction burst forth, causing the surrounding void to explode. It was no wonder he was so furious. He'd been schemed against by Yi Xian time and time again, suffered great losses. This was a great humiliation to him. Heaven Lord! The 7 immortals arrived together and shuddered when they saw the Undying Heaven Lord's ferocious expression. Yi Xian! I'll make sure you die a horrible death. The Undying Heaven Lord's eyes were as red as blood. He looked in the direction Yi Xian had disappeared, and a Tongtian killing intent erupted from him. A forbidden escape art? Yi Xian, don't think I can't do anything to you just because you've learned a forbidden escape art. Just you wait. It won't be long before I make you beg for death." The undying Heaven Lord was already in a berserk state, and he roared viciously. He'd never hated someone so much before. At this moment, his hatred for Yi Xian surpassed everything else. His only thought was to tear Yi Xian into pieces. Heaven and earth boundless, Qian Kuan traceless. Yi Xian and the extreme love master streaked across the sky, escaping endlessly. Even if the undying Heaven Lord wanted to chase after them, it was too late. Half a day later, Yi Xian and the extreme love master landed on a nameless mountain peak, and a smile appeared at the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. "Qingmei, thank you." Yi Xian smiled as he looked at the Lord of Extreme Emotion. "You don't have to thank me, mister. That undying Heaven Lord isn't as cunning as you." The extreme love master chuckled. "I knew that old bastard wouldn't stay put," Yi Xian said. "He would break the seal and steal the small tripod. Unfortunately, the Bronze Sutra and the small tripod are one. It's wishful thinking for him to steal the small tripod. Mister, the undying Heaven Lord must hate you to the core," the extreme love master reminded him. "Although you have a forbidden escape art, you still need to be careful." "Of course I know that." Yi Xian nodded slowly. "Qingmei, the small tripod is already inside the Bronze Sutra. You and I can study the secret of the tripod together." Before Yi Xian could finish, the extreme love master shook her head and said, "You can study it yourself. If you do, just pass it on to me. Right now, I need to rush back to the Extreme Love Palace. After all, the undying Heaven Lord suffered such a huge loss. He won't let this go so easily." "Okay." Yi Xian didn't argue. The two of them talked for a while, and then the extreme love master floated away. A bitter smile flashed across her face, but Yi Xian didn't see it. Ah! As the extreme love master disappeared, Yi Xian sighed softly. How could he not feel the extreme love master's feelings for him? But right now, he couldn't promise this woman anything, because he put all his heart into cultivation. How could he care about these personal feelings? Chapter 1606. Yi Xian exhaled a mouthful of turbid air as he calmed his troubled thoughts. His entire body returned to normal. "Come!" With a flip of his hand, Yi Xian summoned the ancient bronze scripture. With the ancient bronze scripture in his hand, he soared into the sky, transforming into a rainbow of light as he entered the chaotic starry sky. With the seal broken and the sixth cauldron fused with the ancient scripture, Yi Xian wanted to find a secret place to comprehend the opportunity within the cauldron. The vast and boundless chaotic starry sky was undoubtedly the best place. On the other side, the undying heaven palace. The world was silent, and all living things were silent. The undying Heaven Lord stood with his hands behind his back, looking up at the stars. His eyes were gloomy and cold, and the void around him was faintly collapsing, proving that his heart was not calm. How can I not kill such a great threat? The undying Heaven Lord's eyes were malicious as he muttered in a low voice. Boom! A blade pierced through the sky, and the stars fell. He held the undying heaven blade in his hand, and a boundless killing aura spread out, as if this blade was releasing the depression in his heart. Perhaps some people would think that the undying Heaven Lord's emotions were fluctuating because Yi Xian had taken away the cauldron, but in fact, this was only one of the reasons. The real reason was that Yi Xian had become a great threat to him. If he allowed Yi Xian to continue growing, he would probably become a great enemy in the future. Nipping all potential threats in the cradle was the undying Heaven Lord's way of doing things. Yi Xian had already made him feel pressured, and this kind of pressure made it difficult for him to breathe. The undying Heaven Lord was an extremely prideful and arrogant person. However, Yi Xian's appearance gave him an extremely heavy pressure. In terms of methods, Yi Xian was definitely not inferior to him. In terms of temperament, Yi Xian was ruthless and vicious enough to achieve his goals by hook or by crook. In terms of cultivation, Yi Xian was like heaven and earth compared to him now. But if he continued to develop, he would catch up sooner or later. Every time he narrowly escaped death, every time he counterattacked, every time he was breathtaking. As Yi Xian appeared before the undying Heaven Lord more and more, every time the undying Heaven Lord saw Yi Xian, he would be greatly shocked. Yi Xian was constantly getting stronger, and the speed at which he was getting stronger was simply inconceivable. The Undying Heaven Lord truly felt threatened. At this moment, the Undying Heaven Lord's mind was filled with thoughts on how to kill Yi Xian. Otherwise, he would not be able to rest. Forbidden Escape Art. The Undying Heaven Lord of the Undying of the Heavens. Of the Undying Heaven of. Heaven Lord would have killed Yi of Heaven Lord long woods of his of him. Of Undying of Life of Heaven. Of Undying. Of Yi of. Although Yi Xian had killed the Supreme Demon, and used the so-called future transformation art, it did make the Undying Heaven Lord slightly apprehensive, but it was only apprehension. As a Tao ascendant of the Fourth Era, his nirvanic power was said to be able to extinguish all things. Even if Yi Xian could use the future transformation art, the Undying Heaven Lord was confident that he could kill him. After all, in the distant past, the Undying Heaven Lord had fought with Yi Xian of Heaven's future, and he had won that battle by a slight margin. How can I break his forbidden escape art? The Undying Heaven Lord frowned, his expression cold. Clearly, he had no clue about Yi Xian's forbidden escape art, and he was helpless against Yi Xian. The Undying Heaven Lord was thinking of a way to break Yi Xian's calamity transformation art. However, he couldn't find anything that could break the forbidden escape art among the secret arts he knew, and even some ancient legends he had heard of. If I don't kill Yi Xian, my heart won't be at ease. The Undying Heaven Lord's eyes focused as he made a decision. He slashed open the void with his blade, took a step forward, and teleported away. Since there was no other way, the Undying Heaven Lord had to find a way. He couldn't let Yi Xian continue to grow stronger, otherwise, he would be nurturing a tiger that would invite calamity. In the end, he would regret it to the extreme. In a desolate star in the chaotic starry sky, the vast sea of stars was surging, and the stars were rotating, creating a magnificent and peerless map of the starry sky. It gave people a feeling of peerless beauty. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on a star, and the ancient bronze scripture swayed in the starry sky. A total of 6 pages of the scripture were flipping, interweaving into a mysterious and dazzling brilliance. Wang. The void rippled and spread. The 6th page shone, and a small cauldron diagram flickered mysteriously. Mysterious runes fell towards Yi Xian, sealing the heaven and earth, trapping an area. Yi Xian had already sealed this starry sky, and no one could sense that he was comprehending the mysteries of the 6th cauldron here. He sat cross-legged, and his face was sometimes flushed red and sometimes in pain. He was constantly receiving the inherited secret technique from the small cauldron, and no one knew what he was experiencing at this moment. Pooh pooh pooh. Ripples bloomed in the starry sky, and this starry sky seemed to have sunk into a quagmire. Even the surging river of stars was slowing down, and the rotating stars were slowing down. The source of this change was none other than Yi Xian. At this moment, his body was releasing an extremely mysterious aura, and an obscure fluctuation was pulsing on his body. The mysterious rune hidden in his forehead quietly appeared, and at this moment, it was also pulsing slightly, causing this mysterious fluctuation to become even stronger. Bang bang bang. Like the morning bell and evening drum, Yi Xian's heart was thumping loudly, and it actually resonated with this starry sky. Boom! A strange and shocking thing happened. A huge star strangely turned into flying ash, and then an extremely shocking chain reaction occurred. The huge stars all turned into powder, and were completely annihilated in the starry sky. Wah! The vast and surging sea of stars also underwent a strange change. It actually gradually became illusory, and then disappeared like a bubble. Wang. In an instant, this starry sky and universe distorted, and directly turned into a boundless vacuum. Yi Xian was still sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, but the mysterious rune on his forehead pulsed even more violently. Calamity Fate Technique. Boom. Eternity trembled, and chaos was turned upside down. Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes, and a thunderous sound came from his mouth. An extremely terrifying and strange thing also appeared. Rumble. The vanished sea of stars reappeared, and the huge stars that had been destroyed appeared again. Even the starry sky of this part of the starry sky returned to its previous state, as if the change just now was merely an illusion. Pooh! A mouthful of blood spurted from Yi Xian's mouth. His face was as pale as paper, and he weakly fell to the ground. The ancient bronze scripture floating in the starry sky also fell beside him, and this part of the starry sky regained its calm. Huff, huff, huff. Yi Xian was panting violently. He felt like his brain was about to explode, and his soul was on the verge of collapse. Just now, just a moment ago, he had almost died. If he hadn't forcefully suppressed himself at the last moment, he might have really died here. What a terrifying calamity technique. Yi Xian climbed up with difficulty, and said with fear. Just now, he had cultivated this so-called calamity technique, and almost lost his life. Chapter 1607. Life-stealing technique. This was a forbidden secret technique, and it was also something contained in the sixth cauldron. What was life-stealing technique? As the name implied, the so-called life-stealing technique was all about the word stealing. This forbidden secret technique didn't have any other effects. It only had one effect, and this effect made Yi Xian both love and fear it. This function was to put someone on the brink of death and fight to live. This was a forbidden secret technique that could reverse life and death. If Yi Xian suffered a fatal blow, he could use life-stealing technique to regain his life. Life-stealing technique and the inverse character art had similar effects, but there was also a big difference between the two. This was also the reason why Yi Xian loved and feared the life calamity technique. Life-stealing technique only had a 50% success rate in reviving someone from the dead. It could be said that half of it was life and half of it was death, and it all depended on one's luck. This forbidden technique was very similar to the inverse character art in this aspect, but life-stealing technique's success rate was much higher than the inverse character arts. This was also its strength. However, although there was a 50% success rate, there was also a 50% failure rate. If life-stealing technique failed, Yi Xian's body and soul would be destroyed, and he would truly cease to exist in this world. As for the aspect that Yi Xian loved, it was the core of the life calamity technique, which was also the truly terrifying part of it. Every time he used the life-stealing technique, if he could come back from the dead, his cultivation would increase by 1-fold. This was the most terrifying part of life-stealing technique. Everyone in the chaos knew that a person's cultivation needed time to stabilize, or take all kinds of cultivation increasing spirit pills to gradually stabilize and strengthen one's cultivation. Even the so-called devouring technique was to devour other people's cultivation, so that one's own cultivation could increase quickly. This was the same as swallowing spirit pills. However, life-stealing technique broke this limit. As long as one could survive using life-stealing technique, one's cultivation would double. It could be said that if Yi Xian was not afraid of death and used life-stealing technique to cultivate, as long as he could survive, his cultivation would continue to double, and his cultivation speed would be unparalleled throughout the ages. To make a simple analogy, just like Liu Bai's so-called chaotic spirit body, Liu Bai had no bottlenecks in his cultivation, and his cultivation speed could be said to be the fastest throughout the ages. However, if Yi Xian dared to gamble with his life and use the life-stealing technique to cultivate, he could easily leave Liu Bai in the dust. Therefore, Yi Xian both loved and feared the life-stealing technique. Risking one's life to increase one's own strength was both thrilling and exciting. It would be great if he won the gamble, as his cultivation would double. But if he lost the bet, Yi Xian would also die. Just now Yi Xian had been cultivating this life-stealing technique. This was also the reason why he spat out a mouthful of blood and became extremely weak. This forbidden secret technique was too terrifying. It contained the profound meaning of life and death. It was truly half life and half death. If it wasn't for the desperate situation of life and death, Yi Xian would never use this technique. Everyone was afraid of death. Yi Xian was no exception. Naturally, he was afraid of death. It wasn't easy for him to reach where he was today. Although he was willing to gamble with his life, he wasn't arrogant enough to think that he could use the life-stealing technique to cultivate. This forbidden secret technique was a double-edged sword. If used well, he could become powerful enough to counterattack. If not, he would die. Yi Xian gradually calmed his fluctuating emotions. He first put away the ancient bronze scripture, then took out a handful of pills and swallowed them into his stomach. He began to heal the injuries he had just suffered. Time passed little by little. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed. A mouthful of turbid air was spat out from Yi Xian's mouth, causing the starry sky to tremble endlessly. His eyes slowly opened at this moment, and his face was already flushed red. It was obvious that his injuries had all healed. What a pity, what a pity! Yi Xian slowly got up, a trace of disappointment flashing across his eyes. Although he had obtained the life-stealing technique, this forbidden secret technique was indeed extremely terrifying. This made Yi Xian extremely happy. However, the life-stealing technique wasn't a forbidden heavenly technique. It couldn't save Lu Bai at all. This made Yi Xian a little disappointed. However, Yi Xian had already expected this result. Although he was a little disappointed, he wasn't discouraged. At this moment, he had 6 small cauldrons in his hands. All of them were imprinted in the ancient bronze scripture. There were another 6 small cauldrons in the outside world. Obviously, among the other 6 small cauldrons, one of them contained a forbidden heavenly technique. Yi Xian was also eager to obtain it. 3 small cauldrons were in the hands of the 3 supreme experts. The whereabouts of the other 3 cauldrons were unknown. This made Yi Xian's eyes turn deep as he quietly pondered. Each of the 3 supreme experts had a small cauldron. To obtain a small cauldron from them was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Yi Xian still had some self-awareness. He was also extremely wary of the 3 supreme experts. Although Yi Xian had schemed against the undying Heaven Lord and forcefully snatched a small cauldron from him, the heaven-smiting transformation was something that even the supreme experts of all time couldn't do. However, this was only against the undying Heaven Lord. Yi Xian didn't have such confidence against the 3 supreme experts. Chaos, Destiny, Spacetime. These 3 supreme experts represented the power of the 3 laws of the Chaos verse. The 3 supreme experts could control the 3 long rivers. Not to mention the cultivation level of the 3 supreme experts. Just the 3 long rivers were enough to make Yi Xian feel troubled. The river of chaos, the river of destiny, and the river of time. The eternal universe, eternal existence. The history of these 3 long rivers spanned across an entire chaos verse. It was suspected that they had already existed in the previous chaos verse. The heaven-smiting transformation was indeed terrifying, but it might not be enough in front of the 3 long rivers. Moreover, the 3 supreme experts had grasped the profound truths of the 3 supreme laws of chaos. Chaos, destiny, spacetime, and spacetime weren't just empty words. They represented the will of the chaos verse. Some might say that since Yi Xian had a deep friendship with the master of spacetime, could he ask the master of spacetime for the small cauldron? That would be a grave mistake. There was no such thing as unconditional love in this world, and there was no such thing as unconditional hate. Even if Yi Xian had a deep friendship with the master of spacetime, at the level of the supreme experts of all time, benefits outweighed everything else. What was the heaven-shattering cauldron? It was a primordial chaos treasure, a treasure that even the supreme experts of all time valued greatly. What right did Yi Xian have to ask the master of spacetime for it? What right did the master of spacetime have to give it to Yi Xian for free? Thus, Yi Xian couldn't make up his mind about the small cauldron of the 3 supreme experts for a time. Still, it was fine. Yi Xian knew a certain principle. Everyone in the world came for benefits, and everyone in the world went for benefits. In this world there were gains and losses. As long as you could pay a sufficient price, you could exchange for what you wanted. After all, the master of spacetime had a deep friendship with Yi Xian. This could be considered a breakthrough. And Yi Xian saw a glimmer of hope. Yi Xian's heart settled. He already had an answer. He prepared to head to the Temple of Spacetime. It could be considered an old haunt to see the master of spacetime again. However, before he went to the Temple of Spacetime, he still had to do something. This was also something he had promised the master of human Tao. That was to awaken the disciple of the master of human Tao from her frozen slumber and hand over the complete boundless secular technique to her. This was Yi Xian's promise to the master of human Tao. Moreover, the fall of the Master of Human Tao made Yi Xian feel a little guilty. Perhaps her disciple could find the Master of Human Tao's heavenly heart of chaos and regain her position as the supreme expert of all time. Yi Xian took a step forward, turned into a beam of light, and disappeared. Chapter 1608. Boundless Chaos, Hazy and Hazy. An ancient divine temple floated within the chaotic vortex. Dazzling chaotic divine light emanated from it, making the divine temple seem extremely heavy and heavy. Chaos Shrine. This was the #1 shrine in the Chaos verse. It was also the shrine established by the Master of Chaos. It was unparalleled throughout the ages and revered by all living things. However, the atmosphere in the Primal Chaos Divine Palace was heavy because a guest had come to the Primal Chaos Divine Palace. An extremely troublesome guest. You shouldn't have come. The Master of Chaos spoke in a heavy tone. His back was facing the undying Heaven Lord. Although he didn't exude any supreme aura, he exuded an aura that repelled people 1,000 miles away. You are the #1 supreme expert in the Chaos verse, and you control the #1 Chaos River. I can't think of anyone other than you who can help me. The undying Heaven Lord said solemnly. You're wrong. I've never controlled the river of chaos. I'm merely its spokesperson. The so-called #1 of all time is just a joke. The legendary taboo is the one that's truly unsolvable. What am I worth? The Master of Chaos turned around and looked at the undying Heaven Lord. His face was emotionless. Only his eyes were mysterious and deep like the chaos vortex. Chaos, I don't want to talk nonsense. That Yi Xian is getting stronger by the day. He even dares to scheme against me. If we don't stop him, when he grows stronger in the future, he won't even put you in his eyes. The undying Heaven Lord warned. The Master of Chaos was silent for a moment. After 3 breaths, he shook his head and said, Yi Xian isn't under the control of chaos. His future is vague. I don't want to be entangled with him too much. I just want to cultivate in peace. You can leave now. What a transcendent attitude. The undying Heaven Lord sneered and said, Chaos, others might not understand you, but I know you too well. Back then, you ordered Panga to steal from my supreme expert's treasury. Did you really think I didn't notice? What nonsense are you talking about? The Master of Chaos's breath was stifled. However, he calmed down in the next moment and scolded the undying Heaven Lord. Hundun, you are such a hypocrite. The undying Heaven Lord sneered. Back then, you ordered Pangu to steal the heaven-punishing halberd and the bronze ancient scripture. You thought you could fool me, but I saw everything. If I didn't purposely let that ant steal them, do you think he could enter my treasury? The undying Heaven Lord paused for a moment before he sneered. However, I didn't expect Pangu to be so audacious. He actually wanted to take the 2 divine items for himself. Even you couldn't do anything about it. Instead, I was the one who sent people to kill him. As the undying Heaven Lord's words entered his ears, the Master of Chaos's expression gradually turned ugly. He did not admit or deny it. Clearly, he did know what the undying Heaven Lord was talking about. Hundun, there's no need to waste words between us. If you hadn't instructed that brat Pangu to steal those 2 divine items back then, there wouldn't have been a scum like Yi Xian in the future. You're the one who's responsible for his growth. The undying Heaven Lord growled coldly. Undying? What do you mean? The Master of Primal Chaos asked coldly. What do I mean? The undying Heaven Lord sneered. Back then, I couldn't comprehend those 2 divine items. Naturally, I was willing to give them to you. But in the end, I helped that scum Yi Xian. So you owe me a favor. If you don't help me today, the karma between us will be formed. When the primal chaos comes to an end, we'll settle the score. Are you threatening me? Boom! The law of primal chaos. Tongtian pierced the ground. Strands of terrifying chaotic divine light circulated around the Master of Primal Chaos, causing the entire Primal Chaos shrine to tremble. It's not a threat. I just want you to know that if Yi Xian isn't eliminated, there won't be a day of peace for us. He'll definitely be a calamity for us in the future. The undying Heaven Lord said coldly. Silence, silence, absolute silence. As the undying Heaven Lord's words fell, the master of primal chaos went silent. The supreme aura on his body dissipated as well, causing the undying Heaven Lord to wait patiently. Ever since Yi Xian snatched the little cauldron and used the undying Heaven Lord to break the seal, the undying Heaven Lord's desire to kill Yi Xian was at its peak. It was just that Yi Xian cultivated the taboo escape skill. He couldn't do anything to Yi Xian at all. This caused the undying Heaven Lord's heart to be filled with hatred. However, when the undying Heaven Lord calmed down, he finally thought of someone. And that person was none other than the Master of Primal Chaos. As the number one supreme being of the Primal Chaos universe, the Master of Primal Chaos not only controlled the river of Primal Chaos, but he also knew many secrets of the Primal Chaos. If there was anyone who could break the taboo escape skill, it was most likely the Master of Primal Chaos. Therefore, the undying Heaven Lord came to the Primal Chaos Shrine, which led to this scene. Undying. After dozens of breaths of time, the Master of Primal Chaos finally spoke. It's not that I'm unwilling to help you. You know that he cultivated the taboo escape skill. Even if I want to help you, I'm powerless against it. All right. The undying Heaven Lord nodded his head with a sinister look. Since you say that you can't help me, as long as you dare to swear an oath to the Primal Chaos universe, I'll turn around and leave without another word. I'll definitely not pester you endlessly. The Master of Primal Chaos's expression changed slightly. This caused the undying Heaven Lord to sneer coldly. What? You don't dare. Primal Chaos, I know that you don't want to form a grudge with him, but I'm not forcing you to kill him. As long as you can help me break his taboo escape skill, I'll bear all the consequences. The undying Heaven Lord said. Give me 3 days to think about it. The Master of Primal Chaos pondered for a moment before saying, All right, I hope you won't disappoint me. The undying Heaven Lord said solemnly. Right now, the undying Heaven Lord had placed all his hopes on the Master of Primal Chaos. Since the Master of Primal Chaos said that he needed to think about it, it indirectly proved that the Master of Primal Chaos had a way to break the taboo escape skill. This was undoubtedly excellent news for the undying Heaven Lord, and it made him even more excited. His killing intent towards Yi Xian grew even stronger. 3 days later, the Primal Chaos Shrine, an ancient bronze mirror floated in the void. Wisps of murky air flowed on the surface of the mirror, causing one's soul to tremble slightly when looking at it. The undying Heaven Lord looked at it in astonishment. This ancient bronze mirror had shocked him to the core, and the aura that flowed on it caused even his soul to tremble. This treasure is called the Primal Chaos Divine Mirror, a product of the Primal Chaos River. It can see through all illusions and reach the essence of things. The Master of Primal Chaos said solemnly. Primal Chaos Divine Mirror? The undying Heaven Lord murmured as his eyes shone with a divine light. Clearly, this Primal Chaos Divine Mirror should be the key to breaking Yi Xian's taboo escape skill. You mean to say that this Primal Chaos Divine Mirror can break the taboo escape skill, causing that little bastard Yi Xian to have nowhere to hide? In order to confirm his thoughts, the undying Heaven Lord quickly asked. Chapter 1609. In order to ascertain his thoughts, the undying Heaven Lord quickly asked. You're both right and wrong. The Master of Chaos shook his head and continued. Forbidden escape techniques are extremely powerful. This chaotic divine mirror may be able to see through all illusions, but it's still not enough to break through a forbidden escape technique. Are you toying with me? The undying Heaven Lord's expression changed, and his aura turned gloomy. Let me finish. The Master of Chaos said solemnly. In order to truly break the forbidden escape technique, apart from this chaos divine mirror, you'll also need another supreme treasure. Only then can you truly break the forbidden escape technique. What kind of supreme treasure is it? The undying Heaven Lord was startled. The Chaos Verse, the 12 periods, the Chaos Verse, the Destiny Spacetime, the three of us each have a divine mirror. I can lend you the Chaos Divine Mirror, but it's not enough to break the forbidden evasion art. Only by using the Divine Mirror of Destiny, or the Divine Mirror of Spacetime, will you be able to break the forbidden evasion art. Divine Mirror of Fate? The space-time divine mirror? The undying Heaven Lord murmured. That's right, the Master of Primal Chaos explained. You need to borrow one of the divine mirrors. Only by combining the two divine mirrors can you truly seal the heavens and lock down the earth and break Yi Xian's forbidden escape technique. I see. The undying Heaven Lord slowly nodded. However, he frowned and said, there's no need to think about space-time. He has a deep relationship with Yi Xian. It's impossible for him to help me. It seems like I can only look for the Master of Fate. That's your problem. As for whether or not the Master of Fate is willing to help you, that will depend on your ability. After the Primal Chaos Master finished speaking, he casually tossed the Primal Chaos Divine Mirror towards the Undying Heaven Lord. The Undying Heaven Lord solemnly received the mirror. I'll lend you this mirror for 10,000 years. After 10,000 years, regardless of whether or not you succeed in killing Yi Xian, you must return this treasure to me, the Master of Chaos said. All right, the Undying Heaven Lord nodded. He turned and flew towards the outside world. Clearly, with the Primal Chaos Divine Mirror in his hands, he was already halfway to success. As long as the Fate Sovereign was willing to lend him the Divine Mirror of Fate, everything would be fine. Grand Central Region Snowmelt Mountain. It was a snowy day, and the north wind was chilly. Vast snowy mountains connected the heavens and the earth. Snow filled the sky and covered the sun, causing this part of the world to fall into a boundless winter. At a glance, one would feel extremely tiny. Snow was blowing in his face, and the cold wind was rustling. Yi Xian was dressed in black. His hair fluttered in the cold wind. He stepped on the void and traveled through the cold wind, as if he was searching for something. Snowmelt Mountain, this is the place. Yi Xian frowned slightly. He had followed the instructions of the human Tao Master, and came here to find her disciple, who was in a deep sleep. However, the Snowmelt Mountain was vast and boundless. It was indeed difficult to find someone who was sealed in ice. Boom! Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the middle of a snowstorm. His Dharma eyes of destruction were activated, and the snowy mountains were reflected in his eyes. He didn't miss a single detail. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Yi Xian's eyes flickered. He took a step forward and disappeared into the snowy weather. In the next moment, he appeared at the peak of a snowy mountain. It's here. A huge snowy boulder entered his eyes. It looked like an ordinary boulder, but Yi Xian's Dharma eyes of destruction detected a faint trace of life within it. Bang! Yi Xian pointed a finger. The snowy boulder shattered, and a white-clothed woman with her eyes closed appeared. When the white-clothed woman entered his eyes, Yi Xian was stunned. This woman actually had an unparalleled beauty. Even Yi Xian's heart skipped a beat. Yi Xian was definitely not a lecherous man. The fact that this woman's beauty could make his heart skip a beat proved that this woman's beauty was definitely unparalleled in the primal chaos. Unfortunately, although this woman's beauty was unparalleled, her face was always cold. Even in a deep sleep, she gave off an extremely cold and aloof feeling. She was like a snow lotus that one could only admire from afar and not dare to profane. However, Yi Xian merely sighed in admiration. He did not have any other thoughts about this woman. He had only come here to fulfill his promise to the human Tao Master. Wake up! Yi Xian pointed a finger at the woman, wanting to wake her up from her deep sleep. However, in the next moment, the woman suddenly opened her eyes. A cold glint flashed across her beautiful eyes. Boom! The power of karma illuminated the void. A terrifying red light appeared in the woman's hand and blasted directly at Yi Xian. Bang! Yi Xian casually struck out, directly nullifying the woman's killing move. Just as he was about to explain, the white-clothed woman erupted with earth-shattering power and charged at Yi Xian. Chi! A scarlet spiritual sword appeared in her hand. The white-clothed woman's expression was as cold as snow. Her entire body emitted the power of karma. The red clouds around her churned violently. A total of 6 heavenly gates opened behind her. Don't attack. Listen to my explanation. Although this woman had opened 6 heavenly gates, it was still not enough in Yi Xian's eyes. However, he did not want to fight with this woman, because he was only here to fulfill his promise to the human Tao master. Unfortunately, the white-clothed woman's killing intent had already arrived. She did not listen to Yi Xian's explanation at all. The 6 heavenly gates rumbled and thousands of karma sword beams slashed at Yi Xian. "I'm here on your master's orders to wake you up. Stop immediately," Yi Xian berated coldly. Rumble. Yi Xian did not speak. When he finished speaking, the white-clothed woman's attacks became even more ruthless. Thousands of sword beams turned the snow mountain into dust. She charged at Yi Xian again. "Are you done?" Yi Xian's expression turned cold. Before the human Tao master died, she had said that this disciple of hers was extremely headstrong and impulsive. He did not expect it to be true. Boom! Yi Xian stretched out his 5 fingers, causing the entire area to instantly freeze. A terrifying giant hand that covered the sky appeared, bringing with it a destructive might as it smashed towards the white-clothed woman. Bang! Heaven and earth trembled, and the void collapsed. How terrifying was Yi Xian's combat strength! His attack could destroy heaven and earth. Thousands of miles of snow mountain collapsed. Just the terrifying power that erupted from it caused the white-clothed woman's expression to change. Kill! The white-clothed woman held her sword and slashed out a karma sword beam that spanned thousands of miles. She wanted to break Yi Xian's attack. What a pity! Yi Xian's attack was so terrifying that it shattered the white-clothed woman's spiritual sword. Her entire body was slapped down by this attack and fell to the ground like a kite with its string cut. Pfft! The white-clothed woman spat out blood. Her white robes were dyed red. She crashed heavily to the ground. The 6 heavenly gates behind her also disappeared at this moment. Fortunately, Yi Xian had already shown mercy in this attack. Otherwise, he would have definitely taken this woman's life. Why Yi Xian took a step forward and appeared in front of the woman. Looking at the white-clothed woman who was still on the ground, Yi Xian's lips curled into a helpless smile. Attacking without knowing what's right or wrong. You're really reckless. No wonder your master sealed you in ice and hid you here. With your reckless nature, you'll die in the hands of the enemy sooner or later, even if you have extraordinary talent, Yi Xian lectured coldly. At this moment, Yi Xian finally understood the human Tao master's intentions. This disciple of hers was so reckless. Even if she had unparalleled talent, her heart was sinister. She would die in the hands of the enemy sooner or later. Cultivation was not only to improve one's cultivation, but also one's temperament. These 2 things were on par. Clearly, the white-clothed woman's temperament was too ordinary. Even if she could cultivate to half a step to the strongest in the future, she would definitely not take that final step. Who are you? The white-clothed woman crawled up from the ground. Her beautiful face was covered in frost. The blood at the corner of her mouth was extremely obvious. She looked at Yi Xian with great hostility. Chapter 1610. It doesn't matter who I am. I'm only here to fulfill the last wish of the human Tao overlord. Yi Xian didn't want to get tangled up with the white-robed woman, so he naturally didn't want to reveal his name. Last wish, the white-robed woman murmured. In the next moment, her expression changed abruptly, and a wisp of killing intent erupted from her body. How dare you curse my master's death? Boom! The white-robed woman raised her hand and blasted a great art at Yi Xian. Clearly, she was provoked by Yi Xian. You're really annoying. Bang! Yi Xian slapped the white-robed woman to the ground. This time he didn't hold back. The woman spat out a mouthful of blood and couldn't even stand up. Wang! Yi Xian flipped his hand, and a scripture appeared. He casually tossed it beside the woman. Before your master passed away, she asked me to find you and wake you up from your slumber. She also asked me to give you this boundless secular art. With that, Yi Xian turned and strode away. He had done what he needed to do. As for the woman's future, it had nothing to do with Yi Xian. Stop right there. Before Yi Xian could leave, the white-robed woman staggered to her feet. She clutched the scripture tightly as her body trembled to the extreme. My master is the strongest of all eternity. How could she die? Who killed her? The white-robed woman trembled as she rebuked. She didn't believe Yi Xian's words at all. In her heart, the human Tao overlord was the strongest. No one in the entire Chaosverse could possibly kill the human Tao overlord. Yi Xian stopped and frowned slightly. After all, this woman was the human Tao overlord's disciple. Even though the human Tao overlord had passed away, he still had to tell her what had happened. Your master failed the taboo tribulation. I buried her with my own hands. Since you're her disciple, you should cultivate the power of karma well in the future. If you can find the human Tao overlord's heavenly heart of chaos, you can inherit her position as the strongest of all eternity, Yi Xian said briefly. Forbidden tribulation? Tears continuously flowed out of the white-clothed woman's eyes. She sat on the ground powerlessly, and an extremely sorrowful aura appeared. Although she didn't want to believe this terrible news, the fact that Yi Xian was able to find her, and even gave her the boundless secular world technique, as the master of human Tao, had already made her somewhat convinced. Teacher, how could you die? Don't tell me you don't want Luo Yao anymore? The white-clothed woman no longer had the ferocity from before. Instead, she was sobbing helplessly like a little girl. I've already told you everything that needs to be said. I've also handed over her inheritance to you. Goodbye. Yi Xian didn't have any pity for her. It was even more impossible for him to comfort this woman. After all, he wasn't a saint of love, and he had never been soft-hearted towards women. Wait. Seeing that Yi Xian was about to leave, the white-clothed woman forcibly suppressed the grief in her heart. She stood up with difficulty and staggered towards Yi Xian. Is there anything else? Yi Xian frowned. He didn't have time to waste on this woman. His next step was to rush to the temporal temple to meet the master of space and time. You said that you personally buried my teacher. Can you bring me to pay my respects before my teacher's grave? The white-clothed woman no longer had her previous arrogance. She lowered her posture to the extreme and looked at Yi Xian with pleading eyes. Yi Xian was stunned at first. He originally wanted to refuse. After all, he still had matters to attend to and didn't want to waste time with this woman. However, this woman was the disciple of the master of human Tao. It was understandable that a disciple would want to pay respects to their teacher at his grave. Yi Xian couldn't very well refuse. All right. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded. Thank you, fellow Taoist. The white-clothed woman cupped her hands and bowed. Let's go. Boom. Time filled the air and space distorted. Yi Xian directly activated the power of time and disappeared into the snowy winter with the white-clothed woman. You're from the temporal temple? The white-clothed woman asked in surprise. So close yet worlds apart. Time and space sped up as they swept past thousands of mountains and rivers. Yi Xian brought the white-clothed woman with him at an extremely fast speed. Yi Xian didn't answer the white-clothed woman's question. Instead, he brought the woman with him as they traversed through space at high speed. Hey, I'm asking you a question. Although the white-clothed woman was shocked by Yi Xian's terrifying cultivation, she was still extremely prideful. When Yi Xian ignored her, her prideful nature flared up again. No, Yi Xian replied curtly. You're indeed not from the temporal temple. You don't have the aura of the temporal temple on you. You're strange. Why can't I sense what cultivation method you cultivate? Perhaps the white-clothed woman had been in a deep sleep for too long. When she woke up today, she seemed to have become a chatterbox. She kept asking Yi Xian questions. She was very surprised by Yi Xian's cultivation. She could sense that Yi Xian had only opened the fourth heaven's gate. However, his combat strength was simply terrifying. He wouldn't have any problems facing a third-stage immortal realm expert. I advise you to shut up. Yi Xian frowned. He was starting to get annoyed with this woman. Hey, who's your master? I'm Luo Yao. What's your name? Luo Yao introduced herself. Boom. Yi Xian suddenly stopped. His 5 fingers suddenly grabbed the woman's throat and lifted her into the air. A wave of killing intent enveloped the woman. Don't talk nonsense with me. Otherwise, do you believe that I won't throw you down? Yi Xian said coldly. Cough, cough, cough. Luo Yao struggled violently when Yi Xian grabbed her throat. However, she was already severely injured by Yi Xian. It was even more impossible for her to escape from Yi Xian's hands now. Let go, bastard. Let go. Luo Yao shouted angrily. Pa! Yi Xian slapped the woman's face. 5 red marks appeared on her face. The woman immediately quieted down. She looked at Yi Xian with a dazed expression. You dare to hit me? Ah. Luo Yao was like a cat whose hair stood on end. Her beautiful face was extremely embarrassed and angry. She said, even my master has never hit me. You bastard, how dare you hit me? Pa! Yi Xian once again raised his hand and fiercely slapped her. This time, he directly stunned her on the spot. I'm warning you one last time. Don't talk nonsense with me. Otherwise, do you believe that I won't kill you right now? His killing intent was unfathomable. At this moment, Yi Xian revealed his ferocity. His law eyes of destruction flickered with terrifying killing intent. This completely woke the woman up. She was slightly afraid and didn't dare to look into Yi Xian's eyes. I know. Luo Yao said in a trembling voice. Luo Yao whispered in a trembling voice. She could feel that Yi Xian wasn't just saying that. The other party definitely wasn't some kind person. It was very likely that he would kill her. If it wasn't for the sake of the human Dao master, a hateful woman like you would have died at my hands long ago, Yi Xian said coldly. He casually threw the woman down. Stop talking nonsense. Let's continue on our way. Boom. This time, Yi Xian directly used the calamity transformation. He used the power of space-time to travel through the void. His speed was already extremely fast. To Yi Xian, this woman was the type he hated the most. Every second he spent with her made Yi Xian feel disgusted. Yi Xian only wanted to take her to the human Dao master's tomb as quickly as possible. Then, he would abandon her and go to the temporal temple. He didn't have time to waste with her. Chapter 16:11. On the other side, in the Destiny Shrine. Destiny, are you willing to help me? The undying Heaven Lord stood with his hands behind his back. In front of him was an imposing figure. It was the second strongest of all time, the Master of Destiny. If one were to ask which of the 10 strongest was not to be trifled with, the chaos spirits could give many different answers. There was the undying Heaven Lord, the heaven-devouring demon lord who devoured everything, and the Master of Destruction who destroyed everything. Everyone's answer was different. But if one were to ask who the chaos spirits feared the most, it would definitely be the Master of Destiny. He could control destiny, as if he was looking at ants. The Master of Destiny cultivated the Tao of emotionlessness, and he also believed in the Tao of emotionlessness. Everyone's destiny was determined from the moment they were born. Everything in life was controlled by destiny. The Master of Destiny controlled the chaos spirits. He was the one who was feared the most by the chaos spirits. He was also an extremely terrifying strongest of all time. Kill Yi Xian. The Master of Fate was emotionless. His face was expressionless, but his murmur echoed in the Shrine of Fate. Okay. The next moment, the Master of Destiny gave a short reply. This stunned the undying Heaven Lord. The undying Heaven Lord had never thought that the Master of Destiny would agree so easily. Originally, the undying Heaven Lord thought that he would have to persuade the Master of Destiny. He had even prepared some words to persuade him. But now, it was all useless. You're not going to ask me why I want to kill him? The undying Heaven Lord asked in a low voice. You don't have to tell me why you want to kill him. I've always wanted to kill him. Even if you didn't do it, I would have found a chance to kill him. The Master of Destiny said emotionlessly. You have a grudge with him? The undying Heaven Lord was surprised. He didn't expect the Master of Destiny to want to kill Yi Xian. However, in his impression, the Master of Destiny and Yi Xian didn't have any grudges. All living beings who are not controlled by destiny should be killed. All living beings who are free from the control of destiny should be killed. This is the reason why I want to kill him. The Master of Destiny said calmly. Okay. The undying Heaven Lord smiled. He hadn't expected that he and the Master of Destiny would hit it off so quickly. This would save him a lot of time and effort. Destiny, I've already borrowed the Primal Chaos Divine Mirror from Primal Chaos. Now, I'm only missing your Divine Mirror of Destiny. Lend it to me and I'll personally tear that little bastard Yi Xian into pieces. He'll never be able to reincarnate. The undying Heaven Lord said ferociously. Wang, the master of fate, flipped his hand, and an ancient white mirror appeared. The mysterious power of fate flowed through the ancient mirror, and it emitted a terrifying aura that made one's soul tremble. When the undying Heaven Lord saw the divine mirror of destiny, his face brightened. He stretched out his hand, wanting to take the divine mirror of destiny, but the divine mirror of destiny was taken back by the divine mirror of destiny. Fate, what do you mean by this? Are you going back on your word? The undying Heaven Lord was stunned for a moment before his expression darkened. He looked at the Master of Fate with hostility. When did I say I was going back on my word? The Master of Fate smiled. However, his smile was emotionless and filled with an indescribable and terrifying killing intent. Then what do you mean? The undying Heaven Lord was stunned. The Master of Fate looked at the undying Heaven Lord indifferently. His emotionless eyes of fate were spinning, and his voice was as cold as ice. Yi Xian isn't controlled by the primal chaos divine mirror of destiny. He has many secrets and abilities that no one knows of. Although his cultivation base isn't high, and it seems easy for you to kill him, he has many secret techniques. If he escapes, you'll lose more than you gain. The Master of Fate said. What do you mean? The undying Heaven Lord probed. I'll go with you to kill him. No matter how powerful he is, he won't be able to escape from our control. The Master of Fate said emotionlessly. All right. The undying Heaven Lord clapped his hands and laughed. He didn't expect the Master of Fate to give him such a big surprise. With the Master of Fate going with them, it would be easy for the two of them to kill Yi Xian. No matter how powerful Yi Xian was, he wouldn't be able to survive. For the two of us to take action personally, Yi Xian, that bastard, can be considered to have died a worthy death. The undying Heaven Lord said coldly. Let's go. The Master of Fate took a step forward and left the Destiny Shrine. The undying Heaven Lord followed closely behind. The two of them used their greater teleportation and disappeared into the boundless starry sky. At this moment, Yi Xian didn't know that a great danger was coming for him. He brought Luo Yao and entered the valley where the human Tao sovereign was buried. In the valley, Yi Xian stopped and exclaimed in surprise, because his mind suddenly trembled, and his eyelids twitched violently. A trace of uneasiness rose in his heart. What's wrong? Luo Yao looked at Yi Xian suspiciously. She didn't know why Yi Xian stopped. Nothing. Yi Xian forcefully suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and continued to lead Luo Yao into the valley. However, Yi Xian's eyes were filled with uncertainty. He didn't know why he felt so uneasy. Danger. There must be danger. Yi Xian trusted his intuition. Although he didn't know where the danger was coming from, the trembling in his mind made him extremely sure that danger was coming for him. What the hell happened? Yi Xian asked himself. He racked his brains to think about what kind of danger it was, but he couldn't find an answer. Soon, the two of them entered the valley and a grave appeared. However, Yi Xian wasn't in the mood to pay his respects. Instead, he was immersed in his own world of thoughts, thinking hard about who wanted to harm him. You lied to me. Luo Yao's sudden rebuke woke Yi Xian up. Yi Xian raised his head to look at her. But what happened next completely stunned Yi Xian. A grave. The grave of the Master of Human Tao. It was destroyed. The grave where the Master of Human Tao was buried had actually been destroyed. There was no one in the yellow earth, and even the tombstone had collapsed to the ground. How could this be? Yi Xian cried out in shock. He took a step forward and appeared in front of the grave. As expected, the Master of Human Tao's corpse was nowhere to be seen. Why did you lie to me? Just who are you? Luo Yao rebuked angrily. If it weren't for the fact that she couldn't defeat Yi Xian, she would have attacked Yi Xian long ago. Impossible, it's absolutely impossible. I buried her with my own hands. Who dug up the grave? Yi Xian muttered to himself. He ignored Luo Yao's angry rebuke and carefully observed the destroyed grave. His eyes were unmoving. No, it wasn't destroyed by an external force. It was destroyed from the inside. Yi Xian came to this conclusion in shock. With a single glance, Yi Xian could roughly tell that the grave had been destroyed from the inside. No one had been here at all. Could she still be alive? Yi Xian blurted out in shock. He didn't dare to believe his own deduction. The master of human Tao had clearly died in front of him. Could it be that she hadn't died at all, and had crawled out of the grave on her own? Just as Yi Xian was feeling bewildered, his mind suddenly trembled, and his eyelids twitched uncontrollably. "Let's go!" Yi Xian roared. He grabbed Luo Yao, and used the Heaven Calamity transformation to flee. This was because Yi Xian could sense a great terror between life and death assaulting him. If he didn't leave now, he would definitely fall into dire straits. This feeling was completely baseless, but Yi Xian trusted his intuition. He frantically fled with Luo Yao, using almost all of his cultivation. Chapter 16:12. After an incense stick's time, boom. Heaven and earth trembled as the void collapsed. Two majestic figures appeared. They were the Undying Heaven Lord and the Master of Fate. "He's not here." The Undying Heaven Lord's face was gloomy as he looked around. However, he couldn't find any trace of Yi Xian. He seems to have sensed that we're looking for him. There are still traces of his aura here. The Master of Fate said indifferently. His divine light was boundless as the flow of fate flowed between heaven and earth. He was the one who brought the Undying Heaven Lord here. The so-called fate encompassed all living things. Although Yi Xian wasn't under the control of fate, the Master of Fate could still sense Yi Xian's location through some traces of fate. However, they were still too late. When Yi Xian sensed danger, he had already escaped. Tomb of Human Tao. The Undying Heaven Lord coincidentally saw the tombstone. His expression changed as he exclaimed in surprise. "Human Tao has indeed disappeared. I thought that she was cultivating some kind of technique. Who would have thought that she had already fallen?" The Master of Fate said indifferently. "Human Tao has fallen?" The Undying Heaven Lord muttered in shock. His aura was a little chaotic. Although he didn't have much interaction with the Master of Human Tao, he was still slightly fearful of him. He attained his Tao in the 4th Yuan Hui, while the Master of Human Tao attained his Tao in the 5th Yuan Hui. Back then, the Undying Heaven Lord had also nurtured his disciple, hoping that his disciple could become the strongest in the 5th Yuan Hui. However, the Master of Human Tao suddenly appeared. After the 5th Yuan Hui started, he defeated all his competitors in an extremely low-profile manner, and successfully became the strongest in the 5th Yuan Hui. The most important thing was that the power of karma was extremely terrifying. The Master of Human Tao could control karma. Just this point alone made him extremely mysterious among the 10 strongest. Now that he knew that the Master of Human Tao had fallen, the Undying Heaven Lord was shocked. He didn't know why the Master of Human Tao had died. She failed the taboo tribulation. This is the reason why she fell. The Master of Fate murmured. He looked at the dilapidated tombstone indifferently as his emotionless eyes flickered. "Taboo tribulation?" The Undying Heaven Lord exclaimed in shock. He didn't dare to believe it. She walked ahead of everyone. Unfortunately, she still failed in the end. As the saying goes, death is certain in the taboo tribulation. Failure is also within reason, the Master of Fate said softly. "But where is her corpse?" Undying Heaven Lord asked in bewilderment. If one failed to pass the tribulation, there would always be a corpse left behind. After all, the body of the strongest throughout the ages was indestructible. The so-called death was only the scattering of the soul. "I'm curious as well. Could it be that Yi Xian took him away?" The Master of Fate muttered in confusion. "Forget it. Let's put this matter aside for now. We need to find Yi Xian as soon as possible and kill him. Otherwise, if he hides, it will be difficult to find him again." Undying Heaven Lord changed the topic. "Fate, rumble." A fate roulette appeared as streaks of divine light of fate shone out, instantly opening up a path for the two utmost powerful beings. This also allowed the two of them to continue their pursuit of Yi Xian. "Let go of me, you bastard. Let go of me." Shuttling through the void, unparalleled in heaven and earth, the Heaven Calamity transformation combined with the power of time and space erupted at full force. Yi Xian carried Luo Yao and fled frantically. No matter how this stinking woman struggled, Yi Xian didn't reply. Danger. Extreme danger. The greatest fear between life and death. At this moment, the veins on Yi Xian's forehead bulged as if they were maggots. His body erupted with a mighty force that he had never possessed before as he frantically fled through the void. Yi Xian didn't know what was behind him, nor did he know what danger he would encounter. However, his mind was trembling in fear. There seemed to be a voice in the unseen world telling Yi Xian to flee quickly and not look back. The further he fled, the better. Yi Xian believed in his instincts. He knew that if he delayed for too long, he would definitely fall into an unimaginable predicament. Boom! Yi Xian tore through the endless void at an unimaginable speed. This was probably a chaotic extreme speed that Yi Xian had never experienced in his life. Flee! The further he fled, the better. At this moment, this was the only thought in Yi Xian's mind. Everything else had been thrown to the back of his mind. Let go of me, you bastard! Luo Yao struggled frantically, causing Yi Xian to slow down. Moreover, after frantically fleeing, Yi Xian's cultivation was rapidly depleting. Boom! Yi Xian tore through the void and appeared on top of a nameless mountain. He threw Luo Yao to the ground, his expression cold and gloomy. Hurry up and scram, the further the better. Yi Xian angrily rebuked the woman, then turned to look behind him. His mind began to tremble once more, proving that he was still in danger. Why did you lie to me? Where is my master? Luo Yao was completely unaware of the seriousness of the situation. She was still immersed in the matter of the human Dao master. At this moment, she angrily questioned Yi Xian. You idiot! Yi Xian did not have the time to deal with this stinking woman. He took a step into the sky and transformed into a rainbow that instantly disappeared into the distance. Because the danger was getting closer and closer to him, he had to leave quickly. As for the idiot Luo Yao, Yi Xian did not plan to bring her along, because bringing her along would only delay his escape. Come back here. Luo Yao angrily rebuked as she watched Yi Xian disappear. She wanted to chase after Yi Xian, but she could not find any trace of Yi Xian at all. You bastard! Don't let me find you in the future. Luo Yao angrily stomped her feet and prepared to leave by herself. But before she could move, the world suddenly darkened. A terrifying and powerful aura sealed the sky and locked down the earth, directly trapping the entire world. Rumble! The sky was exploding, and the void was collapsing. Two boundless figures appeared. This terrifying power could crush the world, mountains and rivers. Luo Yao's face turned pale, and she was stunned on the spot. Where is Yi Xian? The undying heaven master's 5 fingers suddenly stretched out. Luo Yao did not even have the strength to resist, and was directly sucked in before him. Then, she fell to her knees with a plop. In front of the 2 strongest existences, Luo Yao's arrogance no longer existed. Only fear was left. At this moment, she finally understood why Yi Xian was frantically escaping. It turned out that there were 2 strongest existences behind him that were looking for him. Human Dao disciple Luo Yao greets the 2 strongest existences. Luo Yao's face was pale as she hurriedly bowed to the 2 strongest existences. Human Dao disciple? The Master of Destiny glanced at Luo Yao indifferently. Indeed, he found that this woman's body contained the power of karma. Were you with Yi Xian just now? The Master of Destiny asked in a low voice. You're talking about that black-robed man? Luo Yao did not know Yi Xian's name, but she finally knew at this moment. Damn it, he escaped again. The undying heaven master said in a low voice, because he could no longer sense Yi Xian's aura. Clearly Yi Xian was still with this woman just a moment ago. Now he had already escaped by himself. Chapter 16:13. Fellow Taoists, don't worry. Even if he escapes to the ends of the earth, he won't be able to escape from us, the Master of Destiny said. But his forbidden escape technique combined with the power of time and space can completely fool us. How are we supposed to find him now? The undying heaven lord said with a frown. When Yi Xian discovered that a great terror of life and death was attacking him, the calamity transformation, and the power of time and space were still on his body. If it wasn't for the Master of Destiny relying on his senses to chase after them, they wouldn't have been able to find any traces of Yi Xian. Although the forbidden escape technique is powerful, this girl cultivates the power of karma. As long as we use it well, we'll definitely be able to find him. Boom! The Master of Destiny suddenly made his move and directly extracted the power of karma from Luo Yao's body. He then turned it into a red light and merged it into the Destiny Compass. Go! It had to be said that the Master of Destiny was indeed terrifying. He borrowed the power of karma and combined it with the power of destiny to immediately point in the direction Yi Xian was escaping. Bring this girl along. She might be of great use. As the Master of Destiny spoke, he directly broke through the void and chased after Yi Xian. The Undying Heaven Lord brought Luo Yao along and followed closely behind. On the other side, Yi Xian's speed increased at a terrifying rate. Without Luo Yao as a burden, his speed had already reached its limit. He was even able to use the Calamity Transformation and the power of time and space to his heart's content, causing his aura to be completely concealed. How is this possible? Yi Xian was frantically escaping, but the danger behind him was getting closer and closer. No matter how fast he increased his speed, he couldn't shake off the danger behind him. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Yi Xian was crazily screaming in his heart. He had already pushed the Calamity Transformation to its peak, and even used the power of time and space to support himself. He was extremely certain that no one could discover his movements, unless it was a forbidden character. But even if it was a forbidden character, with their abilities, there was no need for them to go through so much trouble. They could completely block his path. At this moment, Yi Xian could feel the danger behind him getting closer and closer. It was as if there was an invisible line connecting him to this danger. No matter what, he couldn't escape. Boom. Suddenly Yi Xian froze. It wasn't that he didn't want to continue fleeing, but the space around him darkened. He was trapped by two extremely terrifying forces. The strongest of all time? The next moment, Yi Xian roared in his heart. Rumble! Heaven and earth were annihilated, and fate was born. Streams of nirvanic destruction were born in the boundless sky. Strands of mysterious and terrifying power of destiny were intertwined, sealing up the entire world. Not even a fly could escape. Yi Xian, you can't escape. Thump, thump, thump. The ancient times were like the heavens, shaking the heaven and earth. The two supreme beings slowly walked over from the horizon. With each step they took, the heaven and earth within millions and millions of miles would rumble and shake. Calamity Transformation. Yi Xian's eyes widened in anger. He had pushed the heaven-smiting transformation to its limits, so not a single trace of his aura leaked out. His entire being had melded into the void, leaving no traces behind. Karma power? In the void. Yi Xian's face was ashen because the Undying Heaven Lord had Luo Yao by his side. At this moment, the Master of Destiny was holding a mysterious compass in his hand. A strand of karma power was revolving around the compass. Yi Xian finally understood what kind of danger he was in. Two supreme beings attacking at the same time was indeed an extremely terrifying danger to him. He also finally understood why the two supreme beings could seal him. Other than the terrifying Master of Destiny, Luo Yao's karma power was the reason why he was trapped here. Karma was connected, growing and multiplying endlessly. Although he didn't have deep karma with Luo Yao, and had only interacted with her for a short period of time, this woman cultivated karma power. This was perfect for the Master of Destiny to make use of and accurately find the two supreme beings. Find him. Yi Xian, come out. You will definitely die today. The Undying Heaven Lord coldly roared. He looked around, hoping that Yi Xian would be able to walk out on his own. Unfortunately, Yi Xian's Calamity Transformation was executed to the extreme. Even though the two supreme beings had sealed the heaven and earth, they still couldn't find him. However, Yi Xian's heart was trembling nonstop. His expression was dark and uncertain, because he could smell the danger of death. He could feel that he was doomed today. Yi Xian wasn't stupid. On the contrary, he was extremely smart. Two supreme beings were attacking, and one of them was the extremely terrifying Master of Destiny. If the two of them didn't have a way to break his Calamity Transformation, they wouldn't be so confident. Yi Xian, you have escaped the control of destiny. You are an anomaly in the chaotic universe. As the Master of Destiny, I sentence you to never reincarnate. Destiny was unparalleled, and the heaven and earth were frozen. At this moment, the master of destiny was emotionless. His voice reverberated through millions of miles of heaven and earth. A terrifying power of destiny erupted, causing the heaven and earth to become silent. Yi Xian, today I will tear you to pieces. Only then will I be able to vent the hatred in my heart. The undying Heaven Lord laughed cruelly. Go, Wang. The undying Heaven Lord flipped his hand, and the primal chaos divine mirror flew out. The turbid ancient light illuminated the universe, and the heaven and earth within millions of miles were illuminated without a speck of dust. Not good. When the primal chaos divine mirror appeared, Yi Xian's expression changed greatly. The calamity transformation was faintly unstable, as if it was foretelling that a terrifying danger was about to happen. Destiny. Rumble. In the next moment, the winds and clouds changed, and the heaven and earth darkened. The Master of Destiny struck out with the divine mirror of destiny. The terrifying divine light of destiny illuminated the heaven and earth, enveloping everything in the mirror. The two divine mirrors were unparalleled since ancient times. They were the combination of primal chaos and destiny, and they represented the will of the chaotic universe. The two divine mirrors floated high in the sky, primal chaos and destiny intertwined, and a Tongtian light swept down, heading straight for Yi Xian. Boom! The Tongtian pierced through the earth, and nothing could escape. The Tongtian light erupted from the two divine mirrors, and directly reflected Yi Xian, making it impossible for him to hide even with the calamity transformation. Yi Xian appeared in the eyes of the two supreme existences. Yi Xian, today is the day you die. Boom! The undying Heaven Lord laughed maniacally, and the might of an ancient supreme expert filled the heaven and earth. He strode towards Yi Xian with a cruel and tyrannical smile on his face. At this moment, Yi Xian was speechless. He was completely exposed in front of the two supreme existences, and the heaven and earth were completely sealed. He didn't even have the chance to escape. What should he do? Facing the undying Heaven Lord's approach, Yi Xian's heart was suppressed to the extreme, as he looked at the tyrannical face of the other party, like a cat toying with a mouse. Future transformation. Only future transformation could save his life now. However, this forbidden heavenly technique was incomplete, and it required the right time, place, and people to be used. Even if Yi Xian wanted to use it, he couldn't use future transformation. Hopeless. He had never been in such a hopeless situation before. Yi Xian could already smell the aura of death. Facing two of the strongest experts of all time, he didn't even have the chance to fight. This was because the difference between him and the strongest of all time was too great. Chapter 16:14. The undying Heaven Lord closed in on Yi Xian, who was slowly retreating. Stop struggling in vain. Do you think you can survive today? The undying Heaven Lord had forgotten how long it had been since he was this happy. Even when he obtained the heavenly shattering cauldron, he was not this happy. He had never hated someone so much. Yi Xian was the first person he wanted to tear to shreds. He had been waiting for this day for a long time. His wish was finally coming true. He wanted to tear Yi Xian to shreds, and make Yi Xian unable to reincarnate. Yi Xian, you little bastard. How do you want to die? Boom. The undying Heaven Lord stretched out his arms, with an intoxicated expression on his face. The power of nirvana that pierced through the heavens, and the earth was released, and it had already locked onto Yi Xian. Eternal death calamity. There was no way out. Yi Xian clenched his fists. Blue veins popped on his forehead. His face was ashen, and filled with unwillingness. However, there was nothing he could do. The strong were as heavy as a mountain while the weak crawled like an ant. The desperate situation today was all because Yi Xian was too weak. He could not resist the undying Heaven Lord at all. One finger. The undying Heaven Lord only needed a single finger to destroy Yi Xian's body and soul. This was the difference between the two of them. Undying old thief, are you so sure you can kill me? At this point, Yi Xian had calmed down. Since he could not escape, and was not a match for the eternal death calamity, he did not care about the so-called life and death. Do you think you can survive? The undying Heaven Lord laughed. He was too proud of himself. He looked at Yi Xian, as if he was looking at a dead man. Boom. The Master of Fate slowly walked over. He looked at Yi Xian indifferently and said emotionlessly, Yi Xian, hand over the ancient scripture and the heaven-destroying halberd, and I will give you a quick death. You want the ancient bronze scripture and the heaven-destroying halberd? Are you daydreaming? Yi Xian laughed coldly. What eternal death calamity? What Master of Fate? They were just a bunch of greedy people. At this moment, Yi Xian knew he had no way out. Whether he compromised or not, his only fate was death. However, Yi Xian knew he still had a chance. It was the life calamity art. However, the life calamity art was too. It was a gamble. If he could survive, not only would he be able to escape, but his cultivation would also double. However, there was always a great terror between life and death. Although the live bane technique was heaven-defying, it also contained an enormous danger of death. However, at this moment, Yi Xian had no other choice. He could only bet his life that he could survive using the life calamity technique. It was a battle of life or death. There was no way out. However, even if he died, Yi Xian would teach the two strongest experts an unforgettable lesson at the last moment of his death. Yi Xian was not a dog that could be slaughtered by the paragons. Even if he was no match for them, he would make them feel pain before he died. Eternal Reincarnation Fist. Roar. The sky exploded, and the mountains and rivers collapsed. The profound meaning of reincarnation circulated around Yi Xian's fists. The aura of reincarnation that shook the heavens was released. At the last moment of his life, Yi Xian sublimated. He attacked with the fourth style of the Eternal Reincarnation Fist. He even used the Tribulation Transcender Transformation and the attack character art. His combat strength was raised to the peak. Boom! This punch pierced through the sky and the stars. This punch broke the cycle of reincarnation. This punch shook the heavens and the earth. Two fist lights cut through the sky and the earth, carrying a mournful aura, as they blasted towards the two paragons. He dared to fight against the paragons. At this moment, Yi Xian was fearless. Yi Xian charged forward bravely. Even in the face of the two paragons, he dared to attack. A trash like you dares to be so arrogant. Facing Yi Xian's strongest attack, the two paragons were stunned. But in the next moment, the undying Heaven Lord roared, and a powerful technique slammed towards Yi Xian. There was no need for the Master of Destiny to attack. Bang! Pooh! Blood dyed the sky. Yi Xian was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. He spat out blood and his body cracked. Even if he used his strongest attack, he could not block the undying Heaven Lord's attack, let alone cause any damage to the two paragons. Little ant, you don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The Master of Destiny stood with his hands behind his back and said emotionlessly, everyone below the paragons were ants. This was not just a saying. It was an ironclad fact. Yi Xian's combat strength was indeed heaven-defying. He could be considered one of the top talents among the younger generation. He could even fight against the veteran Immortal realm experts. But in the face of the paragons, he was just a slightly stronger ant. Kill! All of a sudden, just as the two paragons were about to charge forward, a strange death light appeared above their heads. This caused their faces to change. Watch out! The Master of Destiny shouted in shock. He threw out a stream of fate casually, shattering the death light. But this was not the end. A black ancient mirror expanded, and the terrifying forbidden death light poured down. Instantly, the two paragons' faces changed. Forbidden item? The undying Heaven Lord roared in anger. He did not expect Yi Xian to be hiding a forbidden item in such a desperate situation. Boom! The forbidden power was covered by the death light. This black ancient mirror was given to Yi Xian by Lu Bai as a life-saving item. Now that he was facing the paragons, Yi Xian had been secretly preparing for it. When the two paragons let their guard down, he finally used it. Chi. The mirror light poured down, destroying everything. Facing the forbidden power of the black ancient mirror, the two paragons did not dare to be careless. They both struck out with their paragons to shatter the mirror light. But the forbidden item was indeed terrifying. The two paragons were still hit by some of the mirror light, causing them to suffer some minor injuries. Destiny. Boom. One had to admit that the Master of Destiny was terrifyingly powerful. He controlled the mysterious power of destiny. The moment he attacked, he exploded with an unparalleled paragons of primal chaos. Bang! The black ancient mirror was sent flying by him. Even the surface of the mirror had cracks. This forbidden item dimmed and fell from the sky. You're courting death. The undying Heaven Lord was enraged. He did not expect Yi Xian to sneak attack them when he was about to die. He suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and pressed his 5 fingers on Yi Xian's head. Puff! Large amounts of blood seeped out from the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. His body was badly damaged. With the undying Heaven Lord's 5 fingers on his head, there was no way he could survive. However, even in the face of death, Yi Xian did not show any fear. Instead, he looked at the undying Heaven Lord with ridicule. Hand over the heaven-shattering cauldron or die. At this moment, the undying Heaven Lord suppressed his anger and shouted at Yi Xian ferociously. Undying old thief, you're really an idiot. Do you think I'll give you the heaven-shattering cauldron? Yi Xian mocked. However, he was coughing violently and blood kept flowing out. Not only did you shatter his physical body, you even destroyed his soul. There is no way he can survive. The Master of Fate spoke with certainty. However, it's better to be safe than sorry. Let me verify it again. The power of fate filled the sky, covering millions of miles. A mysterious power of fate flowed between heaven and earth, as if it was trying to detect if Yi Xian had any life force left behind. After half a day, the power of fate finally dissipated. The Master of Fate nodded indifferently at the undying Heaven Lord, confirming that Yi Xian had indeed died. After receiving the Master of Fate's confirmation, the undying Heaven Lord forcefully suppressed the uneasiness in his heart, thinking that he was being overly cautious and paranoid. If Yi Xian could still survive, then it would be the biggest joke in the world. What about this girl? Since she is the disciple of Human Tao, and Human Tao is on the same level as me, regardless of whether she has died or not, there is no need for us to make things difficult for her disciple. The 2 utmost powerful beings conversed briefly before disappearing from this world, leaving Luo Yao alone in a daze. Sigh. Luo Yao looked at the blood that had spilled from Yi Xian's body, and a complicated expression appeared on her face. She sighed softly and turned into a beam of light, disappearing into the distance. Life could not be controlled. Death could not be controlled, but between life and death, one must be controlled. Heaven and earth turned into nothingness, and all laws fell silent. A little bit of true spirit hovered between nothingness and reality. Half of it was life, half of it was death. The so-called life and death was nothing more than this: defying the heavens and fighting for one's life, living by robbing it. Yi Xian did not know where he was. He only felt that he was shrouded in darkness, as if he was locked in a dark cage. He yearned for light. He wanted to break through the darkness, but a deep sense of helplessness appeared in his heart, preventing him from breaking through the darkness. He could only sink deeper and deeper into the darkness. Sinking, falling, his consciousness was fading. Yi Xian was in a daze. He felt that he was growing weaker and weaker, as if his entire being was about to turn into nothingness, truly fusing with the darkness. This is death. In his daze, Yi Xian muttered to himself. He had never been so close to death, and he was savoring the taste of death. His little bit of true spirit gradually faded, and his consciousness was in a daze. In this boundless darkness, Yi Xian gradually lost track of who he was. I can't die, I absolutely can't die. Just as Yi Xian was about to merge into the darkness, he suddenly roared in a daze. His little bit of true spirit violently fluctuated, wanting to break free from this dark environment. Nothing was left after death. This was a kind of release, but Yi Xian did not want this kind of release. He wanted to live on. There were still many things he had yet to accomplish. Those who bullied and humiliated him, he wanted to pay them back 1,000 times over. Life calamity art. Suddenly, in this boundless darkness, Yi Xian's extremely fierce roar exploded without end. A little bit of true spirit blossomed with boundless brilliance, frantically trying to break free from this dark place. Boom! The darkness shattered and light reappeared. Life calamity art erupted with unprecedented vitality. A little bit of true spirit broke through the boundless darkness, gradually reviving Yi Xian from the brink of death. Wang. Outside, ripples spread out in waves. A little bit of true spirit suddenly appeared in the void, and then began to violently revolve, drawing upon the heavens and earth as it erupted with unimaginable vitality. Life calamity art. Rumble. Yi Xian's voice reverberated between heaven and earth. This little bit of true spirit transformed into a terrifying vortex, and the spiritual energy that filled the heavens and earth began to surge violently. Something strange and astonishing happened. The ground that was stained with Yi Xian's blood began to shatter. Pieces of Yi Xian's flesh and blood began to swirl back from all directions, continuously gathering towards the spiritual energy vortex. Wang. A humanoid figure began to condense, with a faint outline of Yi Xian. Large amounts of flesh and blood began to swirl back, and this humanoid figure gradually solidified, faintly revealing an extremely terrifying aura. Life calamity art. Bang 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 bang. Heaven and earth thundered, and the primal chaos exploded. A total of 4 heavenly gates appeared, and then began to revolve in a terrifying manner. Yi Xian's physical body also gradually condensed, releasing an unimaginably terrifying power. Boom! Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. When his eyes opened and closed, heaven and earth exploded. His soul sat cross-legged in his sea of consciousness, and an extremely ferocious aura erupted from inside out. Open! Rumble! An unimaginable power was born in Yi Xian's body. This power was boundless and terrifying to the extreme, causing Yi Xian's cultivation to soar at a terrifying rate. This was the heaven-defying effect of the life calamity art. Wang. An astonishing phenomenon appeared. The 5th heavenly gate gradually took shape behind Yi Xian, and mysterious chanting could be heard from the heavens. The halo of reincarnation appeared on the 5th heavenly gate, and then rapidly took shape. Chapter 16:16. All of a sudden, when the 5th heavenly gate opened, the halo of reincarnation fell on Yi Xian's body. He hugged his head with both hands and screamed in pain. Arg! Pain! Extreme pain! It was so painful that Yi Xian felt like he was better off dead. Yi Xian felt like his brain was about to explode. Images that he had never seen before appeared in the depths of his mind. A person with boundless darkness. This person was covered by darkness and had an earth-shattering aura. Yi Xian could not see what this person looked like, but his mind was trembling violently. Who are you? The memory fragments in his mind made Yi Xian scream in pain. He pushed aside the black fog in his mind and saw this person's face. What a pity! Yi Xian's head felt like it was about to explode. This blurry dark figure was gradually fading. Only the halo of reincarnation from the 5th heavenly gate covered Yi Xian. Come back, come back. Who are you? Yi Xian screamed savagely. His soul was throbbing crazily, trying to retain the memory fragments in his mind. He roared at the dark figure in the fragments. I am you. Just as the memory fragments were about to dissipate, the dark figure slowly turned around. Although Yi Xian could not see his face clearly, a sense of familiarity grew in his heart. You are me. Yi Xian was speechless. A great fear grew in his heart, and he suddenly shivered. Rumble. The heavens chanted the sutras, the profound meaning of reincarnation. The 5th heavenly gate released a secret technique. It was the 5th move, the eternal reincarnation fist. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not comprehend this fist technique at all. He was completely immersed in the sentence that appeared in his mind. It appeared. It finally appeared. Yi Xian murmured in his sleep. His expression was uncertain, and he was in a daze. He did not feel any joy from coming back from the dead, or having a breakthrough in his cultivation. Once, the ancestor of all beasts once prophesied that Yi Xian was the reincarnation of an extremely terrifying forbidden character. He said that Yi Xian would sooner or later embark on the path of Lu Bai, and would definitely awaken the memories of his previous life. Yi Xian had never forgotten the myriad beast ancestors' terrified expression. The ancestor of all beasts had also mentioned that in the distant and unknown past, there was a small group of heaven-shaking and earth-shattering taboo characters. Their magnificence was unparalleled throughout the ages. This small group of people was known as the taboo of the taboo. They were the strongest group of people in the eternal universe. Yi Xian believed that these people existed, but he did not believe that he was the reincarnation of these people, because he believed that he was only Yi Xian. However, when he came back from the dead, when he opened the fifth gate of heaven, some memories that did not belong to him suddenly appeared in his mind, and the black figure in his memories actually gave him an extremely familiar feeling. Could it be that I really have a past life? Could it be that he is my past life? Heaven-shaking, earth-shattering, everlasting. This black figure made Yi Xian's body and mind tremble. He did not want to be anyone's reincarnation. He only wanted to be himself. All this time, Yi Xian felt that there was a mastermind behind the scenes pushing him forward, as if everything was under the control of this person. Could it be, was this person his so-called previous incarnation? Yi Xian was horrified, shocked by his own bold guess. If he really had a past life, and this past life was the black figure in his memories, and he was the taboo of the heaven-shaking and earth-shattering taboo, all of this could be explained. Yi Xian's heart trembled, but he did not feel excited at all. Instead, an extremely solemn expression appeared on his face. Yi Xian did not understand the so-called past life. If he was really like Lu Bai, he would gradually awaken the memories of his past life. Then the question came. At that time, was he really himself? Would he be replaced by his past life? Would he really disappear, and Yi Xian would no longer exist in this world? This was what Yi Xian was most worried about, because Lu Bai had left before him. He was afraid that Lu Bai would disappear, and when they met again, Lu Bai would no longer exist in this world. Therefore, Yi Xian had always been searching for the heaven-shattering cauldron. Only the taboo heaven technique within it could solve this problem. The past, the present, and the future. These three words flashed across Yi Xian's mind. The present him, the future him, and the past him. These formed a line that he could not understand. The relationship between these three made him confused and puzzled. He had some understanding of his current life and his future life. However, was the past him his so-called past life? Yi Xian's heart was heavy, and he sank into deep thought. The 5 heavenly gates rotated behind him, and although it allowed his cultivation to increase explosively, Yi Xian did not feel any excitement. Half a day passed, and Yi Xian slowly exhaled. His eyes regained their clarity, and he calmed down. No matter what the future held, no matter whether he was the reincarnation of the taboo character or not, he was still him now, and not anyone else. I don't care about my past life, and I don't care about my future. I just want to be invincible in this world. That's enough. Yi Xian muttered. The road had to be taken step by step, and the rice had to be eaten mouthful by mouthful. Yi Xian understood one thing very well. No matter how much he thought, it was useless to him. The only thing he could do was to continuously strengthen himself until he could dominate everything. This was the only correct path for him. Boom! Yi Xian suppressed his chaotic thoughts and began to comprehend the 5th move of the eternal reincarnation fist. At the same time, he was also examining his own cultivation. It had to be said, the life-stealing technique was indeed heaven-defying. Not only did it allow Yi Xian to come back from the dead, but it also allowed him to open the 5th heavenly gate. My cultivation has doubled, and I can open the 5th heavenly gate directly. Both my physical body and cultivation have experienced a terrifying increase. Yi Xian muttered to himself, his eyes filled with surprise. According to the introduction of the life-stealing technique, as long as one could come back from the dead, one's cultivation would double. However, Yi Xian knew one thing very well. Even if his cultivation had doubled, it would definitely not allow him to open the 5th heavenly gate. If an ordinary person wanted to open the 9 immortal heavenly gates, the amount of cultivation required to open each heavenly gate was unimaginable. It was not as simple as 1 + 1. The life-stealing technique was indeed terrifying and miraculous. However, it could not reach such a terrifying level that it could directly allow Yi Xian to advance to the next level. Moreover, Yi Xian did not walk the path of cultivation of the 9 immortal heavenly gates. He cultivated the 12 immortal heavenly gates. The cultivation required to open each heavenly gate was like a bottomless pit. Even if he had used the life-stealing technique to come back from the dead, and his cultivation had doubled, it could only allow him to reach the peak of the 4th heavenly gate. It was not enough to open the 5th heavenly gate. However, Yi Xian had opened the 5th heavenly gate. This made Yi Xian feel extremely strange. He even faintly thought of the black figure in the memory fragment. Chapter 16-17. Yi Xian stopped thinking about it since he couldn't figure it out. He stopped his cultivation and squinted his eyes slightly. The 2 supreme experts thought he had fallen. He couldn't let them know that he was still alive. Otherwise, the 2 supreme experts would attack again. If they could kill Yi Xian once, they could kill Yi Xian a second time. Although Yi Xian had the life-stealing technique, Yi Xian didn't want to gamble with his life again, unless it was a matter of life and death. There was a great terror between life and death. The life-stealing technique seemed to be a life-saving technique, but only Yi Xian knew how terrifying it was. Yi Xian was lucky this time to survive the life-stealing technique. But next time, even Yi Xian wasn't sure if he would be so lucky again. Life and death sounded simple, but only the person involved knew how terrifying it was. Yi Xian's gaze was fixed. He already had a place to go, but he didn't go to the temporal temple. The 2 supreme experts' attack made him realize that he couldn't come into contact with the temporal master. Otherwise, it would attract the attention of the other supreme experts. Boom! Yi Xian took a step forward and directly tore through the void and disappeared. Nanda region. Qi. The boundless sky was torn open, and the vast clouds were trembling. Yi Xian shuttled through the sky at an extremely fast speed. No one could see him at all. Yi Xian didn't come to the Nanda region to hide here. He came to find his avatar. Since Yi Xian left the chaotic world and entered the chaotic universe, his first stop was the Nanda region. He even cultivated the great power of avatar. His avatar had been cultivating in the Nanda region for a long time. Although Yi Xian could sense some changes in his avatar, the distance between him and his avatar was too far apart. However, the difference between the original body and the clone was too great. Even Yi Xian didn't know what realm and cultivation his clone was at after so many years. However, Yi Xian clearly knew that his clone had broken through to the immortal realm before him. After that, he had been cultivating in the South Do Great region. His avatar had always cultivated 2 types of techniques. One was the Chaotic Star Master's Inheritance, the Stellar Origin Art, and the other was the Human Tao Master's Boundless Mortal World technique. These 2 techniques could definitely be said to be of the strongest level. His avatar had been cultivating for an endless amount of time, and he had no idea how far he had cultivated these 2 techniques. This is the place. After leaving the Great Nanda domain for many years, Yi Xian once again returned to his old home. As he got closer to his outer body incarnation, the connection between his original body and his doppelganger grew stronger. Earth burrowing. Yi Xian turned into a black light and burrowed into the ground, disappearing from sight. Whoosh! Magma surged from the underground. Streams of scorching lava were boiling, stirring up huge waves of fire, illuminating the entire underground world with the color of fire. As Yi Xian entered, a figure sitting cross-legged in the magma caused Yi Xian's eyes to light up. It was the avatar that he'd placed here. Boom! Yi Xian took a step forward and appeared in front of his doppelganger. It was also at this moment that his avatar suddenly opened its eyes. His original body and his doppelganger looked at each other. In the next moment, an extremely terrifying power erupted, causing the entire underground world to tremble. 8 great heavenly gates. In the next moment, his avatar trembled all over. A total of 8 great heavenly gates appeared and rotated in the void. Yi Xian was completely shocked. He looked at his doppelganger with astonishment. He had never thought that his doppelganger could cultivate to such a terrifying level. Condense. Yi Xian calmed himself down and formed a secret technique with both hands. His original body and his doppelganger gradually merged together. Boom! One body, two lives. Original body and doppelganger. Regardless of whether it was the original body or the doppelganger, they were both Yi Xian. They were originally one. At this moment, when his original body and doppelganger merged together, Yi Xian's body suddenly erupted with an extremely terrifying aura. The doppelganger's 8 great heavenly gates actually fell into his body and faintly merged with his 5 great heavenly gates. Separate. In the next moment, Yi Xian formed another seal. His doppelganger suddenly separated from his original body, preventing his original body from merging with his doppelganger. What a powerful cultivation! Yi Xian observed his doppelganger and was extremely excited. If his original body and doppelganger merged together, Yi Xian was extremely sure that his cultivation would increase to an unimaginable level. According to Yi Xian's estimation, he could directly break through the 3rd stage and open the 7th great heavenly gate. However, Yi Xian did not do so. This was because if his doppelganger merged with his original body, his cultivation would increase tremendously. However, after so many years of cultivation, his doppelganger's cultivation would also go down the drain. His doppelganger was his life. Moreover, now was not the time to merge with it. He had to wait until his doppelganger cultivated to the half-step omnipotent realm. Only then would he be able to benefit the most from merging with it. Moreover, the 2 omnipotent realm experts thought that he was dead. His original body definitely could not appear again. Otherwise, if the 2 omnipotent realm experts knew that he was still alive, they would definitely attack again. Therefore, Yi Xian had already made up his mind. His original body would stay here to cultivate, while he used his doppelganger to roam the Grand Central Territory.